Chapter 9:21. In the square below, Qin Feiyang only glanced at Old Yi and the State Master. Then he didn't pay attention to the battle anymore. Withdrawing his gaze, he looked at the commander of the Qilin army again and said, I can kill the commander of the invincible Black Army without hesitation, so I can also kill you without hesitation. So, before you make your move, you better think clearly. What? He threatened to kill the commander of the Qilin army? Are you kidding me? When everyone heard this, they were all extremely bewildered. Previously, the commander of the invincible Black Army was killed by Qin Feiyang because he was restricted by the black-cloaked old man's imposing aura and didn't have the power to resist. But now, the black-robed old man was restrained by the Grand Master, and there was no pressure to restrain the commander of the Qilin army. How could Qin Feiyang kill him? Are you stupid? You actually dare to say such words that overestimate yourself. I'm the commander of the Qilin army. My duty is to maintain the order and peace of the great Qin Empire. But now, you're destroying the order here, so I have no choice. The commander of the Qilin army looked at Qin Feiyang and sighed deeply. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, You're willing to give up your life for the so-called order and peace? Yes. The commander of the Qilin army said without hesitation. He then waved his hand and shouted, Kill Qin Feiyang with all your strength. As soon as he finished his words, the surrounding invincible Black Army soldiers rushed towards Qin Feiyang with halberds in their hands. Every one of them was exuding a terrifying aura, which shocked everyone. Their eyes were shining with a fierce light. However, before they could get close, whoosh! 5 figures appeared beside Qin Feiyang at the same time. They were the mysterious lady, Mu Qing, the first ancestor, the second ancestor, and the middle-aged man from the Endless Sea. Mu Qing glanced at the Iron Black Army and said with a smile, How should we deal with them? Leave no one alive. Qin Feiyang said coldly. Mu Qing turned to look at the first ancestor and the second ancestor and said with a smile, Ancestors, it's up to you. The 2 ancestors looked at each other and smiled. Then, they turned into 2 streams of light and rushed toward the Iron Black Army. Immediately, shrill screams resounded in this place. The 2 were like ghosts, coming and going without a trace. The invincible Black Army didn't even have time to discover them before they were killed. In less than 5 breaths, the invincible Black Army in the square was completely annihilated. The ground was littered with corpses and severed limbs. The bloody scene was enough to make anyone shudder. They killed the Iron Black Army. They're so strong. Where did these people come from? Everyone was thinking about too. Originally, Qin Feiyang was in a situation where he would definitely die. However, a group of people suddenly appeared, each one more terrifying than the other. My cousin is quite a bit of my cousin, is he? Is quite a lot cousin his brother is a lot. Lu Zheng chuckled. Yeah. Who would have thought that Feiyang could find so many people to help him? There are 2 false gods among them. The old man in sackcloth laughed. What? 2 false gods? Lu Zheng was shocked. The burly man also looked at the old man in sackcloth in surprise. The old man in sackcloth said, In addition to the black-robed old man who fought with the state preceptor, the other false god is that middle-aged man. The 2 of them immediately looked at the middle-aged man standing beside the mysterious madam. Their hearts were in turmoil. 2 false gods came to save Qin Feiyang. Isn't this too unbelievable? According to the Heaven's Eye Jade, there are 4 false gods here. Now, including the state preceptor, there are 3. Who is the other one? The burly man suddenly said, This person hides very well. If he doesn't show up, we won't be able to detect his aura. The old man in sackcloth glanced at the crowd outside. His eyebrows were full of confusion. At the same time, in another private room, a white-haired old man wearing a mask stood in front of the window. Although his expression couldn't be seen clearly, from his eyes, there was a gratified smile. Dong! Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Come in. The white-haired old man opened his mouth. His voice was very calm. The door opened, and 4 young men and women entered the room one after another. If Qin Feiyang was here, he would recognize these 4 people at a glance. They were Ling Yu, Zhao Yu, Luo Dan, and Feng Ranran. The 4 of them walked to the window. Ling Yu looked at Qin Feiyong in the square and said with a smile, "Now you can rest assured." Rest assured. The white-haired old man nodded. Zhao Yu asked, "Then how long do we have to lurk in the temple?" The white-haired old man pondered for a while and said with a smile, "Feiyong is not in the temple. There is not much point in you continuing to lurk. After Feiyong leaves, you will also follow this old man to cultivate in seclusion." When the four of them heard this, they all seemed relieved and let out a long breath. Ling Yu asked again, "Then when can we confess our identities to Qin Feiyong?" "No hurry. Soon, the miracle will open. At that time, I will send you to the Forgotten Continent and continue to assist Feiyong. Of course, this is also a good opportunity for you to train. There are countless opportunities and great fortunes in the miracle. If you can get it, it is not impossible for you to become a god in the future." The white-haired old man smiled. Become a god. The four of them looked at each other in shock. In the square, seeing a group of invincible black army soldiers being killed by the Mu family's ancestor and second ancestor, the commander of the Kirin army was so shocked that he couldn't recover for a long time. Similarly, the state preceptor, who was fighting with Yigleo in the sky, was also shocked. This time is not like the last time. This time we came prepared. Even if your great Qin Empire sent out all the experts, you can't stop us. Yigleo smiled confidently, and his attacks became more and more fierce. Come prepared. The state preceptor was shocked. While dealing with Yigleo, he looked at Mu Qing and the others. Immediately, his pupils shrank. Mu Qing's strength was naturally not a concern. He could also see through the cultivation of the Mu family's ancestor, second ancestor, and the mysterious madam at a glance. However, although he couldn't sense any aura from the middle-aged man, he gave him a strong sense of crisis. At the same time, as if sensing the state preceptor's gaze, the middle-aged man suddenly raised his head and looked at the state preceptor. The moment their eyes met, the state preceptor's body and mind trembled as if he was struck by lightning. Fake god. How could it be? There was actually another fake god. Is it worth it for you to do this for a mere Qin Feiyong? He pushed Yigleo back with a palm strike and was extremely shocked and angry. Whether it is worth it or not, we know it in our hearts. You don't need to know, Yigleo said expressionlessly. Once again, he carried a monstrous aura and pressed down on the state preceptor. The state preceptor was obviously beginning to feel a little powerless. It was not because he was weak, but because he was afraid. Facing two fake gods, he couldn't handle it alone. He never expected that two fake gods would come to save Qin Feiyong. If he knew this would happen, he would have directly killed Qin Feiyong in the divine prison even if he risked disobeying the emperor. Unfortunately, it was all too late. At the same time, in the square below, Mu Qing pointed to the commander of the Kirin army and asked, "Do you want to kill him?" Qin Feiyong said lightly, "Do I need your help to kill him?" Mu Qing pursed his lips into a wry smile. This was really asking for trouble. Qin Feiyong looked at the commander of the Kirin army and said, "Is the Hao Tian Palace still in its original position?" "Yes." The commander of the Kirin army nodded. "Humph." Qin Feiyong snorted from his nose, threw away the halberd in his hand, and waved his hand to open a portal. "Where are you going?" The mysterious madam frowned. "There are still some things that need to be solved." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed coldly, and he entered the portal without looking back. So troublesome. The mysterious madam was a little annoyed. Although they had two fake gods, this was the capital of the great Qin Empire after all. Moreover, they knew nothing about the background of the great Qin Empire. Who knew if there were other hidden powerhouses? So, it was better to leave as soon as possible. "Stop complaining. Hurry up and follow," Mu Qing said with a frown. She was also a little angry, and quickly rushed into the portal. The mysterious madam, the great ancestor, the second ancestor, and the middle-aged man looked at each other and could only helplessly follow. As for Yigleo, they were not worried. Because with the strength of the state preceptor, it was not enough to hurt Yigleo. Moreover, the distance between the first district and the imperial palace was not too far. If something really happened to Yigleo, they could come to support him immediately. Seeing this situation, the commander of the Kirin army immediately opened the portal and rushed to the Bright Sky Palace. After Qin Feiyong and the others left, the crowd around the square immediately became restless. Why did Qin Feiyong go to the Bright Sky Palace? Could it be that he was going to kill the little prince? The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it was possible. After all, Qin Feiyong killed the emperor's son in one fell swoop. And now, this little prince was not only named Qin Haoyan, but the emperor also created a Bright Sky Palace for him. This would definitely anger Qin Feiyong. According to Qin Feiyong's usual style, he would never let it go. "Grandpa, what should we do?" Ren Wushuang looked at the old man anxiously. She knew Qin Feiyong's character too well. After going to the Bright Sky Palace, he would definitely do something outrageous. The Imperial Palace is not a place you and I can enter. It's useless to be anxious. Just wait for the news. The old man sighed. "I can bring you guys in." Lu Xingchen smiled faintly. With a wave of his hand, he disappeared with the old man and the others. "Are we going to the Imperial Palace?" In another private room, Ling Yu and the others looked at the white-haired old man and asked, "This old man will go alone. You all wait here." After saying that, the white-haired old man disappeared into thin air. "Second Grandpa, Uncle Black, what do we do now?" At the same time, Lu Zheng also looked at the old man in sackcloth and the burly man, not knowing what to do. The old man in sackcloth looked at Yiglao and the imperial tutor who were fighting in the clouds, and his old eyes flashed. "The situation here is settled, and we are no longer needed. Come back to the village with us first. Take that artifact and make a trip to the Forgotten Continent." Forgotten Continent? Lu Zheng was stunned and asked, "What is that place?" "It's a place that scares people, but also makes people yearn for it. You'll know when you get there." Chapter 9:22. Bright Heaven Palace. Everything was still the same as before. The woman in white knelt in front of the entrance of the garden, looking extremely haggard. The two maids had been persuading her in a low voice, but she was indifferent. The Kirin army guarding Bright Heaven Palace sighed inwardly. It was not easy for the Empress. At the same time, they had already noticed the battle between Yiglao and the Imperial Tutor. After all, the two were pseudo-gods and the battle fluctuations were so terrifying that it was hard not to notice. However, they did not know what happened in the first city district. After all, everything happened too quickly and the news had not reached here yet. The woman in white knew that the person fighting with the Imperial Tutor was Yiglao, because she had seen Yiglao in the Divine Prison. However, in her opinion, Yiglao alone could not save Qin Feiyong. The key was still to change the Emperor's mind. Therefore, she did not leave. Swoosh! Suddenly, above Bright Heaven Palace, the void distorted and 5 figures descended one after another. It was Qin Feiyong's group of 5. "Who is it?" The people guarding Bright Heaven Palace detected the appearance of the 5 people right away and raised their heads to look over. 14th Prince. Immediately, everyone's expression changed. "Empress, look, His Highness is here." The two maids also exclaimed in surprise. "Tian'er," the woman in white looked up at Qin Feiyong. Her eyes suddenly filled with tears. "Mother." At the same time, looking at the haggard woman in white kneeling on the ground, Qin Feiyong's heart ached. A monstrous anger emerged in his heart. He turned to look at the middle-aged man from the endless ocean and bowed. "Senior, I have a request." He was unfamiliar with this middle-aged man, but since he came with Mu Qing and the others, he must be here to help him. Although the middle-aged man hid his cultivation, the sense of crisis he brought was no less than Yiglao and the Imperial Tutor. This was enough to prove that the middle-aged man was also a pseudo-god. "I was entrusted by her to help you. As long as she agrees, I can do anything for you." The middle-aged man pointed at the mysterious madam and said coldly. Qin Feiyong looked at the mysterious madam gratefully and transmitted his voice. "I want you to help Yiglao capture the Imperial Advisor." "Capture him?" The middle-aged man frowned and said, "If I join forces with Yiglao, it won't be difficult to capture him. But here, Junior understands Senior's concerns. I'm afraid that there are other experts hiding in the Imperial Palace. However, Senior can rest assured. As long as you can capture the Imperial Preceptor, even if there are other false gods hiding here, they will have no choice but to hold back." Because the state preceptor is not only the state preceptor, but also the teacher of the emperor. The emperor will not watch him die, Qin Feiyang said coldly. He also wanted to use the state preceptor to force the emperor to sign an unequal contract. Of course, if he had the chance to kill the imperial tutor, he wouldn't show any mercy. I see. Realization dawned upon them. No wonder the state preceptor had so much authority in the great Qin Empire. Even the emperor couldn't control him. So it was because of this relationship. The mysterious madam looked at the middle-aged man and said with a smile, "Go, we will take care of things here. If it really doesn't work, we can also hide in the castle temporarily." "All right, I will end this quickly." The middle-aged man nodded, opened a portal, and quickly left. When the portal dissipated, Qin Feiyang glanced at the bright sky palace not far away and took a step forward, landing beside his mother. "Greetings, Your Highness." The two maids quickly knelt on the ground and bowed. "Thank you for taking care of my mother." Qin Feiyang looked at the two girls gratefully. He still had some impression of these two maids. They were his mother's people. Until now, they had not left his mother, which showed that they were loyal to his mother. "This is what we should do," the two maids said with fear. Although they were not unfamiliar with Qin Feiyang, it was only when he was young. When he was young, Qin Feiyang gave people a warm feeling. But now, Qin Feiyang gave people a kind of fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and turned to look at his mother. His eyes were full of self-blame. "Mother, I'm sorry, I made you worry about your son again." He knelt on the ground. His heart was like a knife being twisted, and his face was full of pain. "Tian'er," the white-clothed woman reached out and touched Qin Feiyang's face and said with a smile, "As long as you are fine, it doesn't matter what your mother does." Qin Feiyang couldn't help but clench his hands. If his mother scolded him a few times, he would feel better. But the more his mother was like this, the more uncomfortable he felt, and his hatred for the emperor grew stronger. At this time, the commander of the Kirin army also arrived. Looking at Qin Feiyang, this pitiful mother and son, he also felt sad. Qin Feiyang suppressed his hatred for the emperor and said with a smile, "Mother, your son is fine. Quickly get up." With his help, the white-clothed woman finally stood up, but after kneeling for an entire morning, her legs were numb. "Come and support the empress." Qin Feiyang looked at the two maids and said, "Yes." The two maids hurriedly went up and supported the white-clothed woman on both sides. "Tian'er, don't act recklessly." The white-clothed woman grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand and shook her head. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Don't worry, mother. Your son won't act recklessly." At the same time, he gently pushed away the white-clothed woman's hand and turned to look at the Kirin army. He saw that the Kirin army guarding Hao Tian Palace were all vigilant. Swish! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang rushed into the sky and looked down at Hao Tian Palace, a cold light surging in his eyes. "I said last time, there is no need for this place to exist, be destroyed." He raised his arm and pointed in the air with his index finger. Returning to ruins, a terrifying invisible force, like a torrent of beasts, roared towards Hao Tian Palace. "Presumptuous! Don't mess around." A group of Kirin army roared and rushed towards Qin Feiyang with an amazing saint aura. "The presumptuous ones are you." The Mu clan's second forefather smiled coldly. The emperor's aura was like a waterfall, sweeping in all directions. "Stop." Seeing this, the commander of the Kirin army shouted angrily, looking very anxious. But the Mu clan's second forefather turned a deaf ear, his eyes full of cruelty. "Ah!" A series of screams resounded through the sky. There was no suspense. The Kirin army, under the pressure of the Mu clan's second forefather, had no power to resist. Their bodies were crushed alive by the Mu clan's second forefather's pressure one after another. Blood was like a waterfall, reflecting the sky. Looking at this scene, the commander of the Kirin army was filled with grief and indignation, but his heart was full of powerlessness. The people who came to rescue Qin Feiyang this time were too strong. As the commander of the Kirin army, he was not useful at all. In the blink of an eye, that formless force also blasted into Bright Heaven Palace. But also at this moment, A mighty emperor's aura emerged from Hao Tian Palace and instantly disintegrated the invisible force. The invisible force was Qin Feiyang's battle art, the returning to ruins art. Therefore, the disintegration of the invisible force also caused a certain amount of damage to him. Puff. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but his eyes became colder. Swish. The next moment, the emperor appeared outside Hao Tian Palace, standing in the air with Qin Feiyang. He wore a dragon robe, and his face was cold. The emperor's aura enveloped all directions. He was like the ruler of heaven and earth descending, bringing a sense of oppression that was stronger than the state preceptor. The emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and said expressionlessly, "Remember last time? We also stood opposite each other in this hostile relationship. What? Do you want to fight again? I could defeat you last time, and I can do the same this time." Qin Feiyang sneered, his expression incomparably fierce. Defeat the emperor? The mysterious lady, the Mu family's great ancestor, and the second ancestor looked at each other. Back then, they indeed fought here. However, the emperor suppressed his cultivation. Even so, Qin Feiyang was the victor. Mu Qing whispered, "Amazing." The three of them were secretly speechless. At the same time, the emperor glanced at Mu Qing and the other three, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "No matter what, this is our family matter. Isn't it a little inappropriate for you to let outsiders get involved?" Family? Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Did he have a family? No. He had long despaired of this place, leaving only disgust. Are you admitting defeat now? Back then, when you crippled my cultivation and expelled me from the imperial capital, did you ever think that there would be such a day? Qin Feiyang teased. The emperor was silent. Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Things have come to this, and you still won't tell me the reason? If you want me to die, shouldn't you at least let me know the reason? Sometimes it's better to be confused. You're just too smart. The emperor finally spoke, but he said something that Qin Feiyang couldn't understand at all. Confused? Sorry, I'm not born to pretend to be confused. What about the little prince? Won't you let me see him? I really want to know how extraordinary he is to be able to replace me. Qin Feiyang said, his face full of curiosity. The emperor frowned and shook his head. I won't let you see him. That's not up to you. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold as he looked down at the mysterious lady, the Mu family's great ancestor, and cupped his hands. I'll have to trouble the three of you to help me destroy this Hao Tian Palace. The three of them were a little hesitant. This time, they only came to save Qin Feiyang. They really didn't want to care about other things. Moreover, looking at the current emperor, they had a faint, ominous premonition in their hearts, because the emperor was too calm. However, Qin Feiyang was determined to destroy this Hao Tian Palace today. Seeing that the three of them were motionless, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a mighty dragon's might rushed out of his body. Roar! Accompanied by a loud dragon roar, the purple-gold dragon soul appeared out of thin air. Qin Feiyang jumped up and landed on the head of the purple-gold dragon soul. He looked down at the emperor and shouted, "Do you see that? This is the dragon soul that an emperor should have. What's that mere golden dragon soul of yours?" At that moment, the purple-gold dragon soul roared and swooped down at the emperor with Qin Feiyang. The dragon's might was mighty and intimidating in all directions. Tian'er, stop it. He's your biological father after all. Seeing this, the woman in white cried out anxiously, "Mother, this is between me and him. Don't interfere." Chapter 9:23. He was also forcing the mysterious lady, the Mu clan's great ancestor, and the second ancestor to make a move. Because, whether it was him and the mysterious lady, or him and the Mu clan, they were all using each other. Since that was the case, why didn't he take advantage of the opportunity? Bastard. You really know how to find trouble. Seeing this, the mysterious lady cursed angrily and did not dare to hesitate any longer. Her aura erupted and rushed towards the emperor before Qin Feiyang could. The Mu clan's great ancestor and second ancestor looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and rushed towards the emperor like lightning. Since they were already here, they might as well go all out. If they could kill the emperor now, it would be over. The mysterious lady and the other two attacked with all their might, and the emperor did not dare to be careless. Because the aura they exuded was that of a 9-star combat emperor. Roar! Golden light surged behind the emperor, and a golden dragon soul soared into the sky. The dragon's aura rolled in all directions. You have to think carefully. If you fight with them here, the little prince may be killed by the fluctuations of your battle. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips with a hint of ridicule as he reminded the emperor. The emperor's gaze sank slightly, and he was obviously hesitating. The mysterious lady, the Mu clan's great ancestor, and the second ancestor seized the opportunity to attack together. Bang! 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 The emperor was blasted into the sky on the spot, and the three followed. Qin Feiyang looked up at the emperor, and then looked at the bright heaven palace again. This time, let's see who can stop me. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and pointed his index finger in the air. Another invisible force pounced towards bright heavenly palace frenziedly. I won't sit back and watch. Swish. However, at this moment, the commander of the Kirin army stood above the bright heaven palace with a trace of determination in his eyes. You can't stop me. Qin Feiyang shook his head, and with a slight thought, the commander of the Kirin army immediately held his head and howled. His body also lost its calm and fell towards the garden below. Boom! That invisible force finally blasted into the bright heaven palace. Accompanied by an earth-shaking loud noise, the bright heaven palace was instantly razed to the ground, and dust billowed. Amidst the dust, Qin Feiyang keenly sensed a saint aura. He raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. Immediately, a gust of wind blew. The dust was quickly blown away, revealing everything. Amidst the ruins, a woman with a dusty face was protecting a small child behind her. The woman was the current empress. However, at this moment, her phoenix coronet was crooked, her phoenix robe was torn, and her body was covered in dust. Although he didn't suffer any injuries, he seemed to be in a sorry state. She was now also staring at Qin Feiyang, her eyes full of resentment and hatred. As for the little child, he was hiding behind the current empress. His big, black eyes were staring at Qin Feiyang with fear. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of Celestial Empress. He examined the little child and smiled. This is my little brother? Go away. The current empress protected the little child with both hands, her face filled with panic. Go away? Qin Feiyang looked at her and shook his head. Compared to mother, you are really worse than a piece of trash. I really don't understand why the emperor made you his empress. Is he blind? The current empress was not strong. In the past, he was still weak and could not see through her. But now, he could tell at a glance that this woman was just a 1-star battle saint. Even if I'm not strong enough, I can still kill you. The current empress flew into a rage out of humiliation. Now, she was the empress of the great Qin Empire, the mother of the empire. How could she be offended by an abandoned little bastard? She took a step toward Qin Feiyang. Her arm shot out like an eagle's claw toward Qin Feiyang's head. Really? Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully. The double-winged snow eagle appeared without warning, its eyes flashing with a terrifying, ferocious light. Boom! The saint aura surged and rushed toward the current empress. Ah! The current empress let out a painful cry and was sent flying, blood gushing out. Whoosh! At the same time, Qin Feiyang also took a step forward and landed in front of the little prince with a bright smile on his face. Please don't hurt him. The current empress' expression changed as she hurriedly pleaded. High up in the sky, the emperor was also burning with anxiety, but he was trapped by the mysterious madam and the other two and could not escape at all. The white-robed woman also hurriedly said, Tian'er, you can't make any more mistakes. I'm not wrong. Qin Feiyang roared, scaring the little boy so much that he fell to the ground on his butt. The commander of the Kirin army also looked worried. Qin Feiyang did not really erase his soul. This was because although this person was working for the emperor, he would sometimes think for the emperor and his mother. He was also loyal and could be kept alive. But now, the commander of the Kirin army did not dare to step forward. This was because if Qin Feiyang wanted to kill the little prince now, he could do it with a wave of his hand, and the commander would not be able to stop him. And in the face of Qin Feiyang's roar, the white-robed woman's body could not help but tremble slightly, and then she fell silent. She understood that continuing to persuade Qin Feiyang would only backfire. Who? Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and calmed down a little. He squatted on the ground, looked at the little boy, and asked with a smile, "Your name is Qin Haoyan?" The little boy was terrified. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Do you know? Actually, my name is also Qin Haoyan." It was probably the smile on Qin Feiyang's face that infected the little boy, and the little boy was not as scared as before. He asked timidly, "Really?" His voice was very young, and his words were somewhat vague and difficult to understand. It was obvious that he had just learned to speak. "Really? So the two of us are very fated." Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled, reaching out to pick up the little boy. Seeing this, the current empress, the emperor, the commander of the Kirin army, and Qin Feiyang's mother all had their hearts in their throats. They were afraid that Qin Feiyang would kill the little prince on impulse. "Big brother, what is fate?" The little prince, who seemed to have completely put aside his fear, looked at Qin Feiyang curiously and asked confusedly. After all, he was a child, and his mind was relatively simple. Seeing Qin Feiyang's amiable look, he was not afraid. "It is fate that you and I met. It is also fate that we were born in the same place," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The little prince said in surprise, "Big brother was also born here?" "Yes. I used to live here like you." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Are you also father's child? But why haven't I seen you before?" The little prince asked innocently. Qin Feiyang glanced at the emperor, looked at the little boy, and nodded. "Yes, we were born of the same father, but our fates were different. I was abandoned." "Then you are my brother?" the little prince asked. "Brother?" Qin Feiyang's body stiffened. The word brother seemed to have touched his heartstrings. "Brother, can you tell me why father abandoned you? It feels so complicated." The little prince said again, "Yes, it's very complicated. You are still young, and you won't understand even if I tell you." Qin Feiyang sighed deeply, then rubbed the little prince's head and said with a smile, "I have a few words for you to tell father. Be good and don't move." "Okay." The little prince nodded, with an innocent smile on his face. Qin Feiyang looked up at the emperor, and his eyes instantly became cold. He said, "I don't ask for much. Just tell me why you tried to kill me back then." The mysterious lady and the other two had stopped, but they surrounded the emperor. When the emperor heard this, he pondered for a moment, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "What if I don't say it?" Qin Feiyang said, "For the current me, other than my mother, there is no family to speak of. You should know what I will do." "So, you plan to continue to harm your brother?" Suddenly, a hoarse voice sounded. Swish. Immediately after, a white figure descended above Bright Sky Palace. It was an old man, wearing a white robe, white hair, and a white beard. He exuded an otherworldly aura. Qin Feiyang had seen this person before. It was the old man guarding the pagoda. "Old man Qin?" "Brother?" Qin Feiyang looked at old man Qin, shook his head, and said, "Then I want to ask you, is the family of the emperor reliable? If it is, then why did the first prince and the rest want me dead?" Old man Qin was speechless. Swish. After old man Qin, another figure descended out of thin air. There were the two black-robed old men guarding the divine prison. There were also the Kirin army and the Black Iron army in armor. There was also a group of people wearing the uniform of the divine temple. They were the law enforcers of the divine temple. The aura exuded by each of them was extremely terrifying, especially those law enforcers. They were filled with an amazing murderous aura. Seeing these people appear, the mysterious lady, Mu Jia's ancestor, and the second ancestor immediately fell in front of Qin Feiyang. Their eyes were full of vigilance. "How is their strength?" Qin Feiyang asked via voice transmission. The mysterious lady secretly said, "They are all very strong, especially the old man who appeared first. He gave us a strong sense of crisis. He should be a false god." "False god." Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. The person the mysterious lady was referring to was Old Man Qin. He had guessed before that this Old Man Qin must be very strong, but he didn't expect him to be strong to this extent. It seems that he really knows nothing about the background of the great Qin Empire. He couldn't help but wonder if there were other false gods lurking in the imperial palace in addition to Old Man Qin and the state preceptor. Rumble. Kacha. On the top of the clouds, the battle between Yigleo and the middle-aged man with the state preceptor had reached its climax, and the battlefield of the three people was gradually approaching the imperial palace. Old Man Qin looked up at the sky. His eyes were incomparably deep. Swish. Suddenly, his eyes flashed with a cold light. He looked down at Qin Feiyong and said, "Hand over the little prince immediately and surrender." "With just you?" Qin Feiyong sneered. "Young man, don't be too arrogant. The imperial capital is not a place where you can be presumptuous." Old Man Qin's body shook. A mighty aura emerged and shrouded Qin Feiyong and the others. "It's really a false god." The mysterious lady's pupils shrank and anxiously said to Qin Feiyong, "Quickly go into the castle." Now, Yigleo and the middle-aged man were fighting with the state preceptor and had no time to support. If they were controlled by Old Man Qin's aura, then they would be wiped out. However, Qin Feiyong didn't panic at all. He grinned and said, "It seems that you really don't care about his life in that case." Chapter 9:24. No. The current empress hurriedly stood between Qin Feiyong and Elder Qin. She looked at Elder Qin and said, "Don't do anything. He will really hurt Tian'er." "Don't worry, Empress. He won't dare to touch the little prince, because as long as something happens to the little prince, he will lose his protective talisman," Elder Qin said. Qin Feiyong grinned and said, "You're smart, but didn't you forget something? I still have an ancient castle." The ancient castle was his real protective talisman. Elder Qin raised his eyebrows and looked up at the emperor. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty, how do you want to deal with it?" The emperor looked at Qin Feiyong in silence. A moment later, he looked at the little prince again. After a long time, he looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Although I like him very much, it doesn't mean that you can use him to threaten me. You can have another son if you lose him." Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. How heartless must the emperor be to say such words? He didn't dare to doubt it. Because he was the best example, the emperor could abandon him, and he could also abandon the little prince now. The emperor said coldly, "Tell me, what do you want?" Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and said, "I want you to promise me that you will never hurt my mother and everyone related to me." His mother didn't want to leave the imperial capital, so he had to make plans for her future. As for those related to him, there were even more. For example, Luo Qianxue, Mermaid Princess, Yin Nanshan, and so on. The emperor said in a deep voice, "You are the first person who dares to negotiate with me. Then shouldn't I be honored?" Qin Feiyong sneered. The emperor narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "You have repeatedly offended my dignity. Do you think I will agree?" At this moment, at the top of the clouds, a painful scream suddenly sounded. Everyone looked up. They saw that the battle between the state preceptor and Yigleo had shifted to the sky above the imperial palace. Under the joint attack of Yigleo, the imperial tutor was severely injured and in imminent danger. The emperor raised his eyebrows and ordered, "Old Qin, go and help the imperial tutor." "Yes." Old Man Qin bowed in response and soared into the sky. It's better for you to stay here." But suddenly, a faint laugh came from the vicinity of Bright Heaven Palace. Following closely, a white-haired old man wearing a masked sword into the sky and blocked Old Man Qin's path. It was the old man who had been with Lingyu and the others not long ago. "What? Another false god?" Old Man Qin exclaimed as he looked at the masked old man. His face was filled with disbelief. Hearing Old Qin's exclamation, everyone present turned pale with fright, including the emperor and Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong asked in surprise, "Mu Qing, is she one of us?" "No." Mu Qing shook her head. "No? Then who is he?" Qin Feiyong looked at the masked old man. Suddenly, he noticed the masked old man's eyes and his gaze trembled slightly. The masked old man's eyes actually gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. But the masked old man's temperament made him feel very unfamiliar. What was going on? Had he seen him somewhere before? Qin Feiyong racked his brains to think. At the same time, the emperor looked at the masked old man and asked, "Who are you?" "This old man is just a nosy person. You don't have to be too nervous." The masked old man laughed hoarsely. The emperor raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid you can't control the matters here." "That's not necessarily true." The masked old man chuckled and looked up at the imperial tutor and Yiglao. Qin Feiyong and the others also looked up again. They saw that under the siege of Yiglao and old man Qin, the already seriously injured imperial tutor was now in a mess and in an extremely sorry state. The emperor retracted his gaze and looked at the masked old man. "Are you stalling for time?" The masked old man smiled faintly and did not deny it. As long as old man Qin was restrained, it was only a matter of time before Yiglao and the middle-aged man took down the imperial tutor. Old man Qin suddenly turned and looked at the emperor and bowed. "Your Majesty, please ask them to come out." They? Qin Feiyong and the others were stunned and immediately looked at the emperor and old man Qin in surprise. Who were they? Was there really another false god in this imperial palace? Looking at the emperor again, hearing old man Qin's words, his face was uncertain and seemed to be hesitating about something. Tian, quickly take your people and leave the imperial capital. It was also at this moment. The white-clothed woman transmitted her voice to Qin Feiyong, and her tone seemed to be extremely anxious. "Mother, what's going on? Who made you so afraid?" Qin Feiyong secretly said. "Don't ask anymore. Let's go," the white-clothed woman urged. "Actually, you don't have to worry." The masked old man glanced at Qin Feiyong and the others and suddenly laughed. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyong and the others looked at him again. "There are indeed a few false gods hidden in the imperial palace, but they won't make a move easily. Because their lifespan is coming to an end, they have all entered a state of self-sealing," the masked old man said. The emperor looked at him in shock and anger and said, "How do you know so clearly? Who are you?" The masked old man laughed and said, "Didn't this old man already say just now? This old man is just a busybody." Self-sealing. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. Of course, he also knew about the so-called self-sealing. When he and Lu Xingchen entered the canyon below the ruins to look for Renduxing, the holy monkey they encountered was in a state of self-sealing. And there were only two possibilities for people who sealed themselves. The first was that they were seriously injured and in danger, hiding from the pursuit of strong enemies. Entering a state of self-sealing, their aura would completely disappear. Even through a piece of paper, it would be impossible to detect. It was a very good escape method. Of course, this was also a double-edged sword. If they were discovered, they would only have a dead end, because after self-sealing, they would have no fighting power. The second was that they were nearing the end of their lifespan. Some old antiques who were nearing the end of their lifespan would choose to seal themselves because they didn't want to die. In this way, the life force in their body would stop flowing away. In other words, they would always maintain this state before they were sealed, waiting for the future generations to find a way to extend their lives. However, they must not let their guard down because of this. Because these people who sealed themselves were not really nearing the end of their lifespan. They were just nearing the end of their lifespan. Although there was only a word difference between nearing the end of one's lifespan and reaching the end of one's lifespan, the meaning was as different as heaven and earth. Nearing the end of one's lifespan, they would die soon. Nearing the end of one's lifespan, they would die soon. But there was still a period of time to live. These people who were nearing the end of their lifespan, as long as they were not sealed for too long, could still display their peak fighting power after the seal was removed. The reason why they said this was because if they sealed themselves for too long, their cultivation would also drop bit by bit with the passage of time. Your Majesty, this matter has already involved the fate and safety of our great Qin Empire. We can't hesitate any longer. Old Qin spoke again. No. The emperor decisively waved his hand, looked at Qin Feiyong and shouted, "Take your people and get out of here. If you don't agree to my conditions, I won't leave." Qin Feiyong shook his head. The safety of his mother was more important than anything else. You are really stubborn. Although I don't want to alarm them, if it really comes to that point, I will not hesitate to ask them to come out of seclusion. The emperor's eyes were cold. A golden light flashed in front of him, and a golden bell appeared. Now, as long as I ring this golden bell, someone will immediately use blood to remove the seal for them. At that time, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings, the emperor said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. From the emperor's tone, it was not difficult to tell that those fake gods who sealed themselves had not been sealed for long. This also meant that those fake gods could exert their peak combat strength. If the seal was really removed, with the help of the two fake gods, the state preceptor and old Qin, then he and Mu Qing were really doomed today. Hurry up. Qin Feiyang looked up at Yiglao and the middle-aged man. Now he could only rely on these two people. As long as he could take down the state preceptor before the emperor rang the golden bell, even if those fake gods came out, they would not dare to do anything to him. The battle in the sky was getting more and more intense. The state preceptor's situation was getting worse and worse. Below, old Qin was impatient. Why do we have to go to this step? The emperor looked at Qin Feiyang, shook his head and sighed, then raised his arm and smashed the golden bell with force. Clang! The golden bell shook violently in the void, releasing an earth-shattering sound that reverberated throughout the entire imperial palace. Mu Qing's face suddenly changed and said angrily, Qin Feiyang, if we don't leave now, we will all die here. The mysterious lady, the Mu family's ancestor, and the second ancestor were also anxious. Qin Feiyang's face was also gloomy, but he did not speak for a long time, but his heart was crazily shouting. Quick, quick, quick. The state preceptor was already at the end of the road. As long as Yiglao and the middle-aged man worked harder, they would be able to take him down. Damn it. Seeing this, Mu Qing could not help but curse, looked up at Yiglao and shouted, Old ancestor, quickly open the space-time door. It's too late to leave now. Old Qin sneered, and his divine power rolled, sealing this world. Time passed by breath. About 10 breaths passed. Boom! At the back mountain of the imperial palace, a terrifying aura suddenly emerged. It was all divine power. Without a doubt, the seals on the fake gods that had sealed themselves had already been lifted. 1, 2, 3. At the same time, the mysterious lady closed her eyes and carefully sensed the divine power. All of a sudden, she opened her eyes and said in shock, There are 3 divine powers. Mu Qing, the Mu family's ancestor, and the second ancestor's face instantly turned pale. 3 divine powers were equivalent to 3 fake gods. How could this be played? Qin Feiyang's heart also sank to the bottom. Alas, it seems that this old man still has to make a move. At this time, with a helpless sigh, the masked old man disappeared without a trace. The next moment, he appeared behind the emperor. However, he did not use any weapons, held the emperor hostage, and just stood behind the emperor. But even so, it was enough to make anyone's face change color, because the emperor's cultivation was not yet at the fake god level. If the masked old man wanted to kill him now, it would be too easy. How dare you? Old Qin immediately roared, and his eyes flashed with shocking killing intent. A group of Black Iron Army and Kirin Army also stared at the masked old man with murderous intent. And Qin Feiyang and the others were also shocked. This masked old man's courage was too big, right? Kidnapping the emperor, this was going against the entire Great Qin Empire. However, for them, this was a turning point. Now that the emperor was controlled by the masked old man, these people would definitely not dare to act recklessly. Chapter 9:25. Boom. Just as Qin Feiyang and the others were puzzled, there was a turn for the better in the sky. Accompanied by a deafening loud noise, Yiglao and the middle-aged man finally took down the imperial preceptor. Qin Feiyang and the others were naturally overjoyed with this result. The little prince, the emperor, and the imperial preceptor fell into their hands one after another. Their chips were undoubtedly bigger. However, The faces of Old Man Qin and the others were extremely gloomy. Your strength is not bad. In the sky, Yiglao held the dying Imperial Preceptor and looked at the middle-aged man with a smile. You can do it too, the middle-aged man said. Immediately, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Carrying the Imperial Preceptor, they swooped down like lightning and landed beside Qin Feiyong and the others. Thank you, seniors. Qin Feiyong quickly bowed and thanked them. Yiglao casually threw the Imperial Preceptor in front of Qin Feiyong and said, "Hurry up and finish him." Okay. Qin Feiyong nodded and looked down at the Imperial Preceptor. The Imperial Preceptor's clothes were ragged and his body was covered with wounds. Like a dead dog, he lay on the ground motionless. But even so, Qin Feiyong did not dare to get close to the Imperial Preceptor. Don't worry. His chi has been shattered by us. He can't make any big waves now, the middle-aged man said. Qin Feiyong heard and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He took a step forward and stepped on the Imperial Preceptor's chest. He sneered and said, "You didn't expect to be stepped on by me so soon. If it wasn't for their help, what are you?" The Imperial Preceptor roared hysterically, his old eyes full of resentment and disdain. Yes, if it wasn't for them today, the one being stepped on would definitely be me. But in the near future, I will definitely kill you myself. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with killing intent as he kicked the Imperial Preceptor's head with all his strength. Ah! The Imperial Preceptor immediately screamed and saw stars. He was furious. However, compared to anger, his pride was more unbearable. Who was he? He was the Imperial Preceptor and a false god. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? However, Qin Feiyong ignored him. He looked up at the Emperor and said calmly, "Can you agree to my conditions now?" The Emperor glanced at the masked old man behind him and was about to speak. Whoosh! But at this moment, 3 figures descended in the sky above Bright Heaven Palace, accompanied by terrifying divine might. Everyone looked over. The 3 of them were shrouded in a layer of black fog, making it impossible to see their faces. They were emitting a cold, murderous aura, as if 3 death gods had descended. Obviously, they were the 3 fake gods who had sealed themselves. What happened? One of them asked, his voice sounding old and hoarse. Old Man Qin immediately stepped forward and explained. Immediately, the 3 of them fell silent. They never thought that things would be so complicated. The Emperor glanced at the 3 of them, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "The condition you proposed is an unfair contract." Equal? Qin Feiyong seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world as he mocked. "I also want equal treatment, but have you ever given it to me?" The Emperor was silent. Qin Feiyong said, "At the end of the day, it's all because of you that things have developed to this point. Don't blame me. You have no right to blame me." "He's your father," Old Man Qin said angrily. Qin Feiyong was so angry that he laughed and shouted, "What a joke, as a father. Would you treat your own son like this? Even if he's wrong, you shouldn't take revenge on him like this. Because your life, talent, bloodline, they were all given to you by him. Without these, you wouldn't exist in this world at all." Old Man Qin shouted. The Emperor said coldly, "That's right. If you have the ability, then return everything to me. Life, talent, bloodline." Qin Feiyong muttered, "Haha." Suddenly, he laughed out loud as if he had gone mad. His face was full of self-mockery. Although in the past, he had always said that he had completely given up on the Imperial Palace, the Emperor, and everything else. But in fact, in the depths of his heart, there was still a trace of attachment and desire. After all, blood was thicker than water, and it wasn't something that could be cut off just like that. However, he never thought that the Emperor would be so heartless as to ask him to return everything to him. How? Life, talent, bloodline, they were all innate. Asking him to return these was simply asking him to hand over his life. Did he want him to die that much? At this moment, the woman in white also looked at the Emperor in disbelief. She really didn't expect that the Emperor would say such words to his own son. Wasn't this clearly forcing Feiyong to death? Too much. This is really too much. If I had such a father, I would have already collapsed. Mu Qing shook her head. As a father, in front of his child, he said such cruel words. And in front of everyone, this could no longer be described as heartless. It was simply heartless and inhumane. At this moment, he couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Qin Feiyang. The mysterious lady, the great ancestor, and the second ancestor of the Mu clan were also full of anger, feeling unworthy for Qin Feiyang. Although they and Qin Feiyang were both using each other, no one would be able to tolerate the emperor's attitude towards Qin Feiyang. Why do you still say these words? Don't you think Feiyang has been hurt enough? The woman in white looked at the emperor and asked softly. Her eyes were filled with tears and full of pain. I have 3,000 concubines. As long as I want, there are many children. I don't need him at all. The emperor said indifferently. You bastard! The woman in white roared. Mother! At the same time, Qin Feiyang's angry roar sounded. He clenched his hands, glanced at the emperor, and turned to look at the woman in white. His eyes softened, and he said with a smile, Mother, don't say any more. It's meaningless. Yes. What's the point of saying this now? Tian it's Mother who let you be born in this world. But Mother couldn't protect you well, and let you suffer from torture and suffering since you were a child. Tian Mother is sorry. The woman in white closed her eyes in despair. Her pale face was full of self-blame. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head, smiled and rubbed the little prince's head and said, Go back to your mother's side. After that, he put the little prince on the ground. No one expected that Qin Feiyang would let the little prince go like this, including the emperor and the current empress. Son, come here. When she came back to her senses, the current empress immediately waved to the little prince. Her face was full of urgency. Qin Feiyang ignored her and turned to the woman in white. However, the little prince didn't run to his mother. He looked around for a while, and finally looked at Qin Feiyang's back, and then looked at the emperor, and asked in a childish voice, Father, what did you do to brother? Why is brother so sad now? He was still young and didn't know what life was, let alone talent and bloodline. But he could see that this strange brother was very sad now. So, he asked without hesitation. But in the face of a child's question, no one present answered for a moment, because they didn't know how to answer. The emperor was even more at a loss. Qin Feiyang's body also stiffened. He turned around and walked in front of the little prince. He lowered his head and looked at the little guy. Brother. The little prince looked at him innocently. Qin Feiyang squatted down, reached out and gently grabbed the little prince's shoulder, and said with a smile, Remember my words. If you want to survive in the imperial palace, you have to be wary of everyone, including your father. The fact that he said this proved that he approved of this little brother. Why? The little prince asked suspiciously. You'll understand when you grow up. Qin Feiyang rubbed the little prince's forehead, got up and walked to the woman in white without looking back. The current empress also rushed up, held the little prince, and hid behind Elder Qin and the others. When Qin Feiyang walked to the woman in white, the woman in white raised her hand, stroked Qin Feiyang's face, and murmured with tears in her eyes, Tian it's all my fault. Can you forgive me? Looking at his mother, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel a dull pain in his heart. The anger in his heart also became more and more vigorous. He reached out, held his mother in his arms, and comforted her. Mother, it's not your fault. You don't have to apologize to me. I'm the one who should apologize. Tian the woman in white was sobbing. You carried me for 10 months before giving birth to me, and you worked so hard to raise me. But all these years, I haven't been filial to you for a day. Mother, I feel guilty in my heart. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice, and the tears in his eyes fell uncontrollably. Don't say that. The woman in white hurriedly said, Mother, let me finish. Now in this world, other than you and Uncle Yuan, I have no other relatives. And now, Uncle Yuan is nowhere to be found. You're the only one left. So no matter what happens, I'll always protect you, because you're the only one who can make me abandon everything to protect you. Even if it costs me my life, I won't regret it. Mother, no matter what I become in the future, don't feel strange, because you'll always be my mother. You'll always be the person I care about the most. Because you're the one who gave me life. Qin Feiyong said in a low voice. Tian, what do you want to do? Hearing this, the woman in white got up and looked at Qin Feiyong's face, and there was a strong sense of uneasiness in her heart. The double-winged snow eagle, Mu Qing, and the others also stared at Qin Feiyong in shock and doubt. That was because Qin Feiyong's words truly resembled the last words of a dying man. Qin Feiyong did not answer. With a plop, he knelt in front of the woman in white and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. Tian, tell mother quickly. You won't do anything stupid, right? The woman in white panicked. Now that Qin Feiyong's behavior was too abnormal, the sense of uneasiness in her heart was getting stronger. She held Qin Feiyong's arm tightly, fearing that if she let go, Qin Feiyong would disappear from her sight. Qin Feiyong still kept silent, but there was a flash of determination in his eyes. He gently pushed his mother away, and then stood up suddenly. He turned and looked up at the emperor, and said word by word, "My life was given by mother. You have no right to take it away. As for talent and bloodline, bang." Speaking of this, Qin Feiyong's body shook violently, and a destructive wave spread out from his body. He roared, "Now, I'll return these things to you." Explode. In an instant, all the blood vessels in his body were torn by the battle qi. His skin cracked inch by inch. Blood gushed out and instantly dyed his whole body red. Tian, the woman in white's face suddenly changed. She hurriedly grabbed Qin Feiyong's hand and cried anxiously, "Stop, you'll die. Mother, please forgive me. I really don't want to have anything to do with him anymore." Qin Feiyong smiled apologetically. There was a trace of persistence in his gentle eyes, and he let the blood flow. "Silly child, mother begs you, don't do anything stupid, okay?" The woman in white shook her head and cried sadly. At the same time, Mu Qing, the mysterious madam, Yiglao, the emperor, Elder Qin, and so on. Everyone present looked at Qin Feiyong in horror. They did not expect that Qin Feiyong would destroy the power of his bloodline. One had to know, once the bloodline was destroyed, Qin Feiyong would not only lose his previous talent, but also the foundation he had laid before would collapse, and he would even bleed to death. Chapter 9:26. Heaven and earth were silent, and the gods were silent. For example, Yiglao, the middle-aged man, Old Qin, and the 3 fake gods who appeared later looked at Qin Feiyong with extremely complicated emotions in their eyes. Crippling his own bloodline power, such an extremely terrifying act. If it were them, they wouldn't dare to do it. Although they were all fake gods who dominated a region. Although they and Qin Feiyong were basically enemies, Qin Feiyong's behavior at this moment made them unable to help but feel a sense of admiration. Without a little bit of perseverance, it was absolutely impossible to do such a thing. Feiyong, somewhere in the void. Ren Wushuang, the old man, and the others stood in Lu Xingqian's space artifact, looking at Qin Feiyong outside. Their expressions were full of worry and pain. At the same time, their hearts were filled with indignation. Why did the emperor treat Qin Feiyong like this? Could it be that Qin Feiyong was not his biological son? This was also cruel and unfair to him. If the emperor was willing to show half of the care and concern for Qin Feiyong wouldn't have come to this point today. Even Lu Xingqian felt deeply unworthy for Qin Feiyong. Wasn't it just because of one sentence? Was it necessary to do such a stupid thing? He didn't know how to evaluate Qin Feiyong now. Was it stupid? Or was it courage? No, it was definitely stupid. And it was hopelessly stupid, because such an act would only cause pain to those close to him and delight his enemies. Why was he so stupid? Why? For example, Qin Feiyong's mother, at this moment, was like a desperate old woman, constantly crying out in grief, her face full of sadness. Woo-woo. Even the heavens seemed to be moved by her. Above the imperial capital, a gust of wind gradually blew. Dark clouds surged from the distance. The sky that was originally shining with the sun gradually fell into darkness. Crack, crash. Not long after, in the sky, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and the wind howled. The rain poured down in torrents. What's going on? Why is it raining all of a sudden? People in the imperial capital looked at the sky in puzzlement. What a strong sense of sadness. That sadness came from the imperial palace. What happened there? Ling Yu and the other three stood in front of the window, looking in the direction of the imperial palace. Their brows were full of confusion. In another restaurant, Zhuge Mingyang was also standing in front of the window, looking at the torrential rain outside, for a long time without a word. Suddenly, he opened a portal and appeared in the sky above the palace. What's going on? Looking at Qin Feiyang's current appearance, his eyes were filled with bewilderment. The commander of the Qilin army sighed. He crippled his own bloodline power. Zhuge Mingyang was dumbstruck. But now, he had actually crippled the power of the bloodline? Was he crazy? Zhuge Mingyang glared at Qin Feiyang and shouted, "Do you think you can get everyone's sympathy by doing this?" "I don't want to get anyone's sympathy. I just don't want to owe him," Qin Feiyang said lightly. "Don't want to owe him?" Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. He turned to look at the emperor and immediately understood. "You are no longer worthy to be my opponent, Zhuge Mingyang." He shook his head, turned around, and retreated to the side in silence. "Is that so?" Qin Feiyang muttered. Blood was still flowing. His face was getting paler and paler. The merged fire of life was frantically repairing his blood vessels. But every time it was repaired, his blood vessels would rupture again. Time passed breath by breath. There was not much blood left in his body. The ground under his feet was dyed red with blood. He raised his head and looked coldly at the emperor. The heavy rain poured on his body, making him a little cold. But looking at the emperor's indifferent face, his heart was even colder. "Is this the ending you want?" The masked old man standing behind the emperor looked at Qin Feiyang, whose breath was getting weaker and weaker, and asked in a low voice. But the person he asked was not Qin Feiyang, but the emperor. But the emperor did not answer. Although Feiyang hated you before, in fact, deep in his heart, he still longed for the love and care of you as a father. And now, he has truly given up on you. He has completely given up on you. The masked old man shook his head and sighed. The emperor frowned and asked without looking back, "Who are you? Why do you know him so well?" "Me?" The masked old man pondered for a moment and said lightly, "You will know in the future." After that, he lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyang again, his old eyes filled with love. Plop. No one knew how long it had been. Qin Feiyang lost his balance and fell into the mud. Feiyang. The white-clothed woman's body and mind trembled. She quickly squatted down and helped Qin Feiyang to sit on the ground. His body and face were covered in mud, but it couldn't hide his weakness. "Mother, I'm sorry." He looked at the white-clothed woman and smiled apologetically. His voice became hoarse, pale, and weak. "I'm the one who should be sorry." The white-clothed woman hugged Qin Feiyang, crying bitterly, "Mother, if there is an afterlife, I still want to be your child again," Qin Feiyang muttered. He could clearly feel that his life force was rapidly dissipating. He couldn't even muster the strength to speak. But at this moment, his heart was especially warm and peaceful. "Good, good, good." The white-clothed woman nodded repeatedly, tears gushing out like a spring. "Thank you, mother." The rain hit Qin Feiyang's face, washing away the mud on his face, revealing a pale face. But there was a bright smile on that face. There was no more blood on his body, because the blood in his body had already flowed out. His consciousness was being swallowed by darkness. His cultivation was also falling step by step. 8 Star Wars sect, 7 Star Wars sect, 6 Star Wars sect, Tian you can't die. Mother can't live without you. I beg you, don't leave mother behind, okay? The white-clothed woman pleaded. She looked as if she had aged dozens of years and was filled with helplessness. "Mother, I can't bear to part with you either, but now, your child's heart is really calm, because from now on, I don't owe him anything anymore." Qin Feiyang muttered, and after saying the last word, he slowly closed his eyes. The fluctuations of life had also completely disappeared. "No, no, no, no. Wake up, Tian." The white-clothed woman shook Qin Feiyang with all her might, as if she had gone crazy. However, Qin Feiyang didn't show any signs of waking up. Why Why do you treat my child like this? Heavens, I beg you. Please save this poor child of mine. She sat paralyzed in the mud, hugging Qin Feiyang tightly in her arms. She looked at the hazy sky and screamed in despair. Boom. Crack. Thunder resounded for thousands of miles. Lightning illuminated the sky. The rain mercilessly slapped the white-clothed woman's face, making her look especially lonely and desolate. Could it be that a peerless monster of a generation has fallen just like that? Mu Qing muttered. He only had hatred for Qin Feiyang. However, looking at Qin Feiyang lying in the arms of the white-clothed woman, there was an unresolvable sadness and a trace of regret in his heart. Perhaps this time, allowing Qin Feiyang to return to the great Qin Empire was a mistake. Qin Feiyang is already dead. There's no point in us staying here. Quickly go and get the sky profound flame, cold ice flame, and heavenly thunder flame. Let's leave. Yiglao said to Mu Qing and took out the space-time gate. Today, none of you will leave. Seeing this, old man Qin's eyes flashed with a shocking murderous intent. Is that so? The Mu family's great ancestor sneered and stepped forward. He picked up the dying Grand Master and said, "Whoever dares to stop us, I'll kill him." Old man Qin frowned and turned to look at the three false gods behind him. However, the three of them did not make any statements. The black fog shrouded their figures, and their expressions could not be seen clearly. Sigh. Mu Qing sighed deeply and strode in front of the white-clothed woman. He bowed and said, "Auntie." But before he could say anything, the white-clothed woman scolded, "Go away. Don't disturb my child." Mu Qing raised his eyebrows and said, "Auntie, I must take the three flames with me. Without the sky profound flame, heavenly thunder flame, and cold ice flame, he could not summon the miracle. Then the Mu family's efforts over the years would be wasted." The white-clothed woman did not pay any more attention to Mu Qing. However, the emperor said coldly, "He was a member of the great Qin Empire when he was alive, and he will be a ghost of the great Qin Empire when he dies. Don't even think about taking away a single one of his things. A member of the great Qin Empire? Don't you think it's funny? Why didn't you say that before he died? I really feel sorry for Qin Feiyang to have a father like you." Mu Qing was so angry that he laughed. The emperor said expressionlessly, "This is between father and son. You have no right to ask." "Haha, father and son? Don't you feel ashamed when you say those two words? I really admire your shameless character more and more now." Mu Qing shook his head and did not hide his sarcasm. "Shut up, all of you." However, at this moment, the masked old man shouted. His tone was no longer as indifferent as before, and there was a piercing chill in it. Everyone present looked at him. The masked old man said, "You have no right to take Feiyang's things." The emperor said in a deep voice, "I said that you can't interfere with the matters here." The masked old man's eyes turned cold. In an instant, he disappeared behind the emperor and appeared in front of him. Slap. Then, he actually slapped the emperor in the face in front of everyone. What? Everyone was petrified on the spot, dumbfounded. One had to know. The emperor was the supreme ruler. Even these fake gods of the great Qin Empire had to be respectful to him. But this masked old man actually slapped the emperor in public. Who exactly was he? The emperor was also stunned. He never thought that in this world, there would be someone who dared to hit him. This slap is not for anything else, but to remind you, as the descendant of the Qin emperor, you must rule the country with benevolence and justice. You must have a heart that embraces all things and accept every subject of the great Qin Empire. The masked old man said coldly. Chapter 9:27. Tyrannical Hegemony? The emperor suddenly became angry and shouted, "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to teach me a lesson?" The masked old man sighed deeply, his old eyes full of disappointment. Whoosh! He stepped in front of the white-clothed woman, looked at Qin Feiyang and bowed. "My lord, this old man will take you away." "My lord." Everyone present was once again deeply shocked. This terrifying old man actually called Qin Feiyang's mother my lord? Didn't this mean that this man was Qin Feiyang's mother's subordinate? The white-clothed woman looked up at the masked old man and said, "It's you? I'm sorry. I didn't tell you my identity immediately, and I didn't stop Fei Yong in time," the masked old man said. The white-clothed woman shook her head and said, "You have your reasons for doing this. I won't blame you." As she spoke, she carried Qin Fei Yong, got up, and glanced at the imperial palace. When he was alive, Fei Yong hated this place the most. "I hope that after he dies, you can find a pure land for him to bury. Don't let his soul be disturbed again. Now, I'll entrust this matter to you." The white-clothed woman handed Qin Fei Yong to the masked old man. The masked old man took Qin Fei Yong and asked, "What about you?" "You know, I can't leave." The white-clothed woman shook her head. Sigh. The masked old man looked at the white-clothed woman for a long time. After a long sigh, he turned and flew into the sky. Whoosh! But at this time, Yiglao and the middle-aged man instantly stood in front of the masked old man. Yiglao said in a deep voice, "You can leave if you want to, but you have to leave Qin Fei Yong here." The emperor glanced at Yiglao and the middle-aged man, then looked at old Qin and the three fake gods whose faces could not be seen clearly. He shouted, "Don't let them take Qin Fei Yong away." Whoosh! The four of them immediately surrounded the masked old man, Yiglao, and the middle-aged man, their eyes flashing fiercely. "Do we really have to fight before we can leave?" However, if this old man were to act, someone would definitely die today. The masked old man looked at the gods with disdain, not showing the slightest fear. Die? No matter if it was Yiglao or Qin Wentian and the other three, when they heard the words of the masked old man, a cold sneer appeared in their eyes. They were all false divinities, yet they still dared to boast like that. How foolish. Boom. The six of them unleashed their auras and attacked the masked old man. The masked old man narrowed his eyes, revealing an extremely dangerous signal. It was like a sleeping lion that was about to awaken. But suddenly, the masked old man withdrew his gaze and lowered his head to look at Qin Fei Yong in his arms. His eyes trembled slightly. Seeing this, Yiglao and the others raised their eyebrows and looked at Qin Fei Yong. Immediately, the six of them narrowed their eyes. Qin Fei Yong was still lying quietly in the arms of the masked old man. His eyes were closed and his face was pale. However, they could faintly sense that there was a faint life fluctuation within Qin Fei Yong's body. How is this possible? Isn't he already dead? The six people's eyes were full of disbelief. Was it an illusion? However, this was not an illusion. Qin Fei Yong really showed signs of life. And as time went by, this sign of life became more and more vigorous. The emperor, the woman in white, Zhuge Mingyang, the mysterious lady, and the commander of the Kirin army also quickly noticed this abnormality. Their eyes were also full of surprise. A person who was already dead unexpectedly showed signs of life. What was going on? "I knew you wouldn't die so easily," Mu Qing murmured. Her eyes flashed and she shouted, "Yiglao, quickly protect Qin Fei Yong. You also protect him." The mysterious lady quivered and immediately shouted at the middle-aged man. Yiglao and the middle-aged man instantly changed sides and stood together with the masked old man, guarding against Qin Wentian and the other three. At the same time, below, the Mu family's ancestor and the second ancestor also firmly controlled the state preceptor. As long as Qin Wentian and the other three dared to make a move, they would not hesitate to kill the state preceptor. Boom. Suddenly, the red sword Qi, the flame battle Qi, and the purple gold dragon Qi rushed out of Qin Fei Yong's body one after another. The three types of battle Qi intertwined together, exuding an unparalleled destructive aura. Battle Qi recovery. This proves that he's not dead yet. Inside the spatial artifact, Lu Xingchen looked at this scene, and his eyes were also bursting with light. Not dead? Ren Wushuang and the others heard this, and their faces were instantly filled with ecstasy. He's not dead yet. Is this bastard a monster reincarnated? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes widened in anger. If Qin Fei Yong really came back to life, then between him and Qin Fei Yong, one of them would die in the other's hands sooner or later. The life fluctuations overflowing from Qin Fei Yong's body became more and more amazing. Suddenly, A mysterious energy surged out of his body. This energy was repelling the masked old man, and it threatened him greatly. A hint of bewilderment flashed in his eyes as he tried to let go of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang did not fall. Instead, he hovered in the air with his battle chi swirling around him. His expression was serene as though he was in a deep sleep. The mysterious energy surged even more violently. The masked old man, Yiglao, the middle-aged man, and old Qin began to retreat involuntarily. Roar! Clang! In the next moment, a loud dragon's roar rang in the air, followed by two deafening noises. The nine-leaf fire lotus, the red sword soul, and the purple gold dragon soul roared out of Qin Feiyang's body at almost the same time. When the three battle souls appeared, they immediately grew in size. Finally, the purple gold dragon soul was several thousand feet long. It was like a lofty mountain ridge as it spun around Qin Feiyang. Its dragon's might was vast and mighty. The red sword soul awakened on its own. It was like a huge sword that could split the heavens and earth. It hovered above Qin Feiyang, emanating a destructive aura. The flaming beast shadow that was hiding in the sword soul charged out as well. It roared in the air, its ferocious might unparalleled. As for the nine-leaf fire lotus, the 9 fire lotus leaves fell off on their own as well. However, they did not explode. Each of the fire lotus leaves was the size of a dustpan. They were like 9 red shields that surrounded Qin Feiyang. Waves of fire surged and swept across the sky for several miles. The sky and earth changed color at this moment. What's going on? The others looked at this scene in shock and confusion. It was common knowledge that battle souls would only appear when their masters were awakened. Currently, Qin Feiyang was unconscious. It was impossible for him to awaken his battle souls. However, why would the 3 battle souls appear? Could it be that the 3 battle souls had their own consciousness? Impossible. Battle souls were controlled by their master's will. It was impossible for them to have their own consciousness. However, if that was not the case, how could this be explained? Roar! At this moment, the purple gold dragon soul raised its head and roared. Suddenly, it dragged its huge body and soared into the sky. However, the red sword soul and the 9-leaf fire lotus did not move. They were like loyal guardians protecting their master, Qin Feiyang. Everyone's eyes followed the purple gold dragon soul as it rose into the sky. The purple gold dragon soul soared into the sky, entered the clouds, and disappeared. Where did it go? The others were puzzled. However, in the next moment, an even more majestic aura surged in the sky. However, it was not a dragon's might. It was an emperor's might. This emperor's might was many times more powerful than the current emperor's. As soon as the emperor's might appeared, everyone in the imperial capital felt a pressure that came from the depths of their souls. Even false gods like Yiglao and Old Qin could not help but want to worship it. At this moment, everyone looked at the rolling clouds in the sky. It felt as if an ancient great emperor had returned. What's going on? The emperor's eyes trembled. In the face of this emperor's might, even he could not help but feel terrified. Woo! Woo! Strong winds howled in the sky. The dark clouds gradually dispersed. When the scene within the dark clouds appeared before everyone's eyes, it was as if a sudden clap of thunder was roaring in everyone's minds. At the peak of the sky, the purple gold dragon soul had disappeared without a trace. However, there was a stone statue in its place. The stone statue was about 100 feet tall. It shone with a dazzling purple gold divine light. How's this possible? Looking at the stone statue, the current emperor shook his head frantically. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The stone statue's face was well-defined and carried a strong sense of vicissitudes. One could tell at a glance that it was a middle-aged man. His eyes were bright like the eyes of the heavens. They seemed to be able to see through all things and the world's origin energy. He was holding a sword in his hand. However, it was not a complete sword. It was a broken sword. There was no tip of the sword. Although the broken sword was only a stone statue, everyone could still feel the terrifying sharpness. They felt that as long as this person waved the sword, the world would shatter. Why did this stone statue appear? Old Qin and the other false gods, the commander of the Kirin army, Zhuge Mingyang, and everyone in the imperial palace turned pale with fright. This figure, this face, this broken sword, they were all too familiar with it. It had even been imprinted in the depths of their souls and could never be forgotten. Because the owner of this stone statue was the first emperor who founded the great Qin Empire and left behind a world-shaking reputation. Moreover, this stone statue was exactly the same as the god statue worshipped by the mermaid clan. Its body that was over 30 meters tall was like a towering mountain, and it emitted an aura that made one feel despair. Qin Feiyang, quickly answer me. Why did the ancestors' god statue appear here? Suddenly, the emperor retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang, who was floating in the air, and roared hysterically. The great Qin Empire had been around for tens of thousands of years. However, this was the first time that the god statue of the first emperor appeared, and this must have something to do with Qin Feiyang. However, Qin Feiyang closed his eyes tightly and did not give any answer to the emperor. If this child did not fall out with his majesty, he would definitely be the most suitable candidate for the next emperor. But now, we must not let him live. Otherwise, in the future, it will definitely affect the fate of our great Qin Empire. Old Qin and the other false gods looked at each other, and a cold light surged in their eyes. They rushed towards Qin Feiyang at the same time. They were full of murderous intent. How dare you? The masked old man roared. Yiglao and the middle-aged man hurriedly chased to stop them. But after all, they were all false gods. As for Old Man Qin and the other three, they suddenly attacked without any warning. Therefore, it was too late for the masked old man and Yiglao to stop the four of them. As expected, Qin Feiyang would definitely be killed by the four of them. At the same time, Chapter 9:28. It seemed like Qin Feiyang was about to be killed by the four of them. Boom! In the skies, the stone statue of the first emperor suddenly released a purplish-gold divine light that enveloped Qin Feiyang. Pooh! Old Qin and the others were sent flying by the purplish-gold divine light. Their bodies trembled as they spat out blood. Their eyes were filled with shock. The stone statue of the first emperor was protecting Qin Feiyang? Why was this happening? Soon after, an even more shocking scene appeared. The purplish-gold divine light carried the unconscious Qin Feiyang and slowly rose into the air. The nine-leaf fire lotus and the scarlet sword soul followed him and protected him. Finally, Qin Feiyang entered the skies and hovered before the stone statue. The purplish-gold divine light surged into his body. At this moment, every inch of his skin and every cell on his body shone with a dazzling purplish-gold light. What's going on? The others were shocked and puzzled. The appearance of the stone statue of the first emperor was already shocking enough. However, they did not expect it to protect Qin Feiyang. Haha! The masked old man suddenly laughed. Everyone looked at him. They did not know what he was laughing about. If I'm not mistaken, he must have obtained Emperor Qin's legacy. The masked old man enunciated each word clearly. His eyes shone brightly. What? Emperor Qin's legacy? As soon as he said this, everyone's bodies and minds trembled. Their minds buzzed. Just as everyone was feeling shocked by this, Qin Feiyang's body was also undergoing earth-shattering changes. Initially, all the blood in his body had been drained. However, at this moment, another strand of blood was born. However, this blood was not red. It was purplish gold. As soon as this strand of purplish gold blood appeared, it began to flow in his body. Finally, it entered his heart. Immediately, his heart shone with a dazzling purplish gold light. In the end, his entire heart turned purplish gold. At this moment, his heart, which had stopped beating, started to beat again. His vitality was also restored by more than half. At the same time, strands of purple gold blood were endlessly born from his heart. Like a stream, they flowed towards Qin Feiyang's limbs and bones. In the meantime, the broken blood vessels all over his body were also healing rapidly. About 10 breaths passed. The purple gold blood covered Qin Feiyang's entire body. His life force had already recovered to its peak, but he still did not wake up. He lay in front of the stone statue with a serene expression. Boom! Suddenly, His body was filled with a weak aura. This was not the aura of a fighting soul, but the aura of his own cultivation. Before his death, his cultivation had completely disappeared. However, at this moment, step by step, he began to recover. Martial artist, martial master, martial ancestor, battle king, battle emperor, battle master. In less than 100 breaths of time, his cultivation had returned to its peak state. 9 Star Wars sect. But it did not stop there. His aura was still rising, as if he was about to break through the shackles and step into the Battle Saint realm. At this moment, his eyelids twitched, and then he suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of light shot out. His eyes didn't change much. They were still the same as before, dark and deep. However, his weakness had already disappeared. Just as he opened his eyes, a muffled explosion rang out from within his body. Boom! The aura around his body suddenly increased by several times. A shocking saint aura also surged out of his body. What? Not only did he not die, he even benefited from a disaster and broke through to the Battle Saint realm? Everyone was dumbstruck, especially Zhuge Mingyang. His expression was extremely ugly. Back then, when Qin Feiyang had just entered the shrine, he was only a 1-star battle master. At that time, he was already a 9-star battle master, a full 8 small realms apart. But it had only been a few years, and he had already caught up to him? At this rate, surpassing him was only a matter of time. Am I not dead? What's going on with my cultivation? At the same time, Qin Feiyang muttered to himself as he lay in the air. The light in his eyes had already dissipated and was replaced by a trace of confusion. Soon, he noticed the purple-gold divine light around his body, and the confusion in his eyes became even stronger. What was this? Why did it give him a very comfortable feeling, and his entire body was warm? Ancestor. When his gaze swept past the stone statue, it was the same as the emperor and the others' reaction. It was filled with shock. After a long while, he came back to his senses. He immediately sensed a familiar aura. Mother's aura, Mu Qing's aura, and the aura of an emperor. Looks like I didn't die yet. Qin Feiyang muttered, the corner of his mouth pursing into a bitter smile. He had thought that he would definitely die after crippling his own bloodline, but he didn't expect that he would survive. What was even more unexpected was that he would experience 2 life and death tribulations in one day. He looked at the statue of the first emperor and muttered, "Did you save me?" The statue stood tall in the sky, like an ancient emperor looking down on the common people. Next, Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and sank his mind into his body. Looking at the purple-gold blood flowing in his body, his expression suddenly became dull. How did the blood become this color? Purple-gold blood, purple-gold divine light. Could it be the ancestor again? He raised his head to look at the stone statue again, his eyes full of surprise. Suddenly, the statue of the first emperor began to collapse, turning into a gorgeous rain of light. Roar. Following closely, accompanied by a loud dragon roar, a purple-gold divine dragon rushed out of the rain of light. This is, Qin Feiyang's eyes widened. This purple-gold divine dragon, although alive, was not made of flesh and blood. Wasn't this his purple-gold dragon soul? Qin Feiyang understood. Back then, he had opened the purple-gold dragon soul in the Mermaid Clan's Holy Land because of the ancestors' approval. Although the statue in the Holy Land was carved from stone, it contained the ancestors' will. So, his purple-gold dragon soul also had a trace of the ancestors' will. And now, when he was in danger, the ancestors' will appeared and saved him from danger. In other words, the statue he saw before was formed by the ancestors' will. Thank you, ancestor. From this moment on, I will cherish my life. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang stood up and bowed 3 times in the direction where the statue disappeared. Not only did the ancestor save him, but he also helped him break through to the Battle Saint realm. It could be said that he was given a great fortune, and he had a premonition that the purple-gold blood in his body was definitely not simple. Therefore, he was extremely grateful to the first emperor. Immediately, he looked at the purple-gold dragon soul again and smiled. Thank you too. Roar. The purple gold dragon's soul let out a long roar, turned into a waterfall, and fused into Qin Feiyang's body. And just as the purple gold dragon's soul entered his body, his expression was slightly stunned. In his mind, a huge amount of information emerged. This information was very unfamiliar to him. What is it? Qin Feiyang calmed down and checked the information. Soon, a trace of bewilderment crept up in his eyes. This was actually a cultivation method of a battle art called the Divine Dragon Art. Divine Dragon Art? Qin Feiyang frowned. Why did this name sound so familiar? Suddenly, his body trembled violently, and his face instantly revealed a look of ecstasy. He finally realized why the Divine Dragon Art gave him a sense of familiarity. Because this Divine Dragon Art was the battle art created by the first emperor. When he was young, he sneaked into the emperor's study and read an ancient history book. In this ancient history book, there was some information about the first emperor. Although there wasn't much information recorded, there was one thing that was clearly written. Back then, when the first emperor conquered the world, in addition to his own strength, he also controlled a super terrifying battle art. This battle art was the Divine Dragon Art. According to the records, the power of this Divine Dragon Art had already surpassed the limits of a perfect battle art. Back then, many of the tyrants who dominated a region were defeated by this Divine Dragon Art. There were even records that the previous emperor of the Tianyang Empire, Mu Tianyang, was also defeated by the Divine Dragon Art. One could imagine how terrifying this Divine Dragon Art was. But before the first emperor disappeared, he didn't leave behind the cultivation method of the Divine Dragon Art. Therefore, as time passed, the Divine Dragon Art became an ethereal legend. In the past, when Qin Feiyang read this ancient history, he didn't believe that there really was a Divine Dragon Art, because it was too unbelievable. Beyond the limits of a perfect battle art, wasn't this equivalent to a divine art? How could there be a divine art in this world? But now it was different. After cultivating the 6-word divine art, his understanding of the divine art was deeper than anyone else. Perhaps this Divine Dragon Art was really a supreme divine art. Qin Feiyang suppressed his excitement, closed his eyes as if there was no one else around, and carefully read the cultivation method of the Divine Dragon Art. What is he doing now? Seeing this, everyone was suspicious. Don't need to comprehend? However, in less than 5 breaths, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, and there was a hint of surprise between his eyebrows. This Divine Dragon Art was very profound, but at this moment in his mind, it was very clear and clear. Every single cultivation method was clearly displayed, including the true meaning and profound meaning of the Divine Dragon Art. There was no need for him to comprehend it all. He could easily grasp it. However, Qin Feiyang was clear in his heart. This was not because he was talented, but because he had obtained the inheritance of the first emperor. And it was a complete inheritance. But at the same time, he was very puzzled. He had opened the purple gold dragon soul for so long. But why did he only get this inheritance now? He raised his arm and opened his palm. A wisp of purple gold divine light emerged from his palm. That purple gold divine light was very small, about the size of a strand of hair, but it exuded a mighty dragon might, as if a real dragon had appeared. And the emperor and the others below looked at the wisp of purple gold divine light, their eyes full of surprise. The masked old man's performance was particularly special. He stared firmly at the purple gold divine light, and there seemed to be a trace of disbelief in his old eyes. But there was also a hint of nervousness, anticipation, and even a hint of joy, which seemed extremely complicated. However, Qin Feiyang did not notice all of this. He also stared at the purple gold divine light, his heart full of doubts. A moment later, with a slight thought in his mind, more purple gold divine light emerged from his palm. A purple gold square seal quickly condensed. The square seal, which was as big as an adult's fist, floated in front of Qin Feiyang, emitting a dazzling radiance that illuminated the sky. At the bottom of the square seal was a vivid and lifelike purple gold divine dragon. Chapter 929. Whoosh! Seeing the square seal, the masked old man's eyes trembled slightly. He quickly rushed up to the sky and landed beside Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Don't talk. The masked old man secretly transmitted his voice while carefully looking at the square seal. At the same time, the emperor and others below also stared at the square seal in shock. It's really the divine dragon seal. The masked old man looked at the square seal for a moment, then looked at the bottom of the square seal. When he saw the purple gold dragon imprinted at the bottom of the square seal, his eyes were filled with shock. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at the masked old man in shock and asked, "How did you know?" The divine dragon technique had a total of 4 moves, and this square seal was the first move, the divine dragon seal. Not only do I know that this is the divine dragon seal, but I also know that you have mastered the divine dragon technique. I also know that the blood in your body has changed. The masked old man laughed hoarsely. At the same time, he waved his hand and a wave of divine power swept out and flew toward Qin Feiyang's wrist. Before Qin Feiyang could react, he felt a pain coming from his wrist. When he looked down, there was a wound on his wrist. Wisps of purple gold blood slowly flowed out of the wound. Looking at the purple gold blood, Qin Feiyang's expression revealed a hint of bewilderment. When he looked inside his body, he didn't feel any aura from the blood. But now, when the purple gold blood flowed out of his body, it emitted a strong dragon aura, just like the blood of a dragon. What? Purple gold blood? The emperor and others also saw the purple gold blood, and their faces were full of disbelief. The masked old man looked at the purple gold blood with burning eyes and transmitted his voice. Do you know what blood this is? This is purple gold dragon blood. Dragon blood. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. That's right. Now the blood flowing in your body is dragon blood, and it's pure dragon blood. The masked old man nodded. Why is that? Qin Feiyang asked instinctively. His face was full of disbelief. Because you received the inheritance of the Qin Emperor. You know what? The blood in the Qin Emperor's body is also purple gold dragon blood. Furthermore, only those who possess the purple gold dragon blood can cultivate the divine dragon technique. As far as this old man knows in this world, only you and the Qin Emperor possess the purple gold dragon's blood, the masked old man said. This, Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Shocked, aren't you? The masked old man asked with a smile. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then can you tell me where you obtained the inheritance of the Qin Emperor? The masked old man thought to himself. Human? Qin Feiyang was about to blurt out the words mermaid clan, but he suddenly became vigilant. The masked old man smiled and said, Actually, even if you don't tell me, this old man knows. You know? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. The masked old man smiled faintly and said, The mermaid clan's holy land, right? What? Qin Feiyang's body trembled violently, and his eyes were full of horror. He actually knew. Everyone thought that the Qin Emperor didn't leave the cultivation method of the divine dragon technique. But in fact, he did leave it. It's just that he left the inheritance of the divine dragon technique in the statue of the mermaid clan, waiting for a lucky descendant to inherit it. Coincidentally, you went to the mermaid clan and obtained this complete inheritance. Perhaps it's not a coincidence that you can obtain this inheritance. It's the result that the Qin Emperor had long expected. The masked old man sighed, and there was an inexplicable emotion in his tone. Expected result? You mean, the first emperor had expected that I would go to the mermaid clan 10,000 years ago? Qin Feiyang frowned. That's right. The masked old man nodded. Qin Feiyang didn't believe it. He knew that the first emperor was very strong. But to predict the future, this was simply a fantasy. One had to know. At that time, he wasn't even born. The masked old man glanced at Qin Feiyang, shook his head and said with a smile, This old man can only tell you that the strength of the Qin Emperor is not something you can imagine. Then tell me, I have activated the purple gold dragon soul for so long. Why did I only get the inheritance of the divine dragon technique today? Qin Feiyang said. This old man has already said before that to cultivate the divine dragon technique, you must have the purple gold dragon blood. In the past, Although you were also a descendant of the Qin Emperor, you didn't really inherit the bloodline power of the Qin Emperor. To put it bluntly, in the past, you were not qualified to inherit this inheritance. The masked old man said. Qin Feiyong suddenly understood. The purple gold dragon blood was a necessary factor to cultivate the divine dragon technique. Without the purple gold dragon blood, it was naturally impossible. The masked old man continued, and this inheritance left by the Qin Emperor is also a test. Test? Qin Feiyong was stunned. Yes. Put yourself in a desperate situation and fight to live. Not everyone dares to cripple their own bloodline power, especially a monster like you, because the more talented a person is, the more they cherish their bloodline power. The masked old man said, I agree with this point. If not for the current emperor forcing me to this point, I wouldn't have done such a stupid thing like destroying my own bloodline power. Qin Feiyong sighed. Do you hate him? No, actually, you should thank him. If not for him forcing you, would you be able to awaken the purple gold dragon blood? Maybe you won't be able to awaken it in this lifetime. If you can't awaken the purple gold dragon blood, you won't be able to get the inheritance of the Qin Emperor. The masked old man smiled. Grateful? Qin Feiyong smiled coldly and asked, this purple gold dragon blood, other than being able to cultivate the divine dragon technique, does it have any other benefits? Of course. The most obvious one is your talent. After awakening the purple gold dragon blood, your talent and comprehension will increase exponentially. Your cultivation speed will at least be twice as fast as your current foundation. As for the other benefits, it's not convenient for me to say too much. I'll leave it to you to slowly discover. The masked old man said. Qin Feiyong was extremely excited, putting aside his talent and comprehension, just his cultivation speed. After opening the door of potential, his cultivation speed was already very shocking. But now, he was actually able to double the speed on top of that. For example, he needed 1 year to cultivate from a 1-star battle saint to a 2-star battle saint. But now, he only needed half a year. This kind of speed was simply shocking to death. How do you know so clearly? Who are you? And why do you give me a familiar yet strange feeling? Qin Feiyong looked at the masked old man, his eyes full of confusion. Don't worry too much about this old man's identity. You'd better think about how to make the emperor sign that unfair contract. After all, if you can't make him agree, you won't be able to roam the forgotten continent in peace. The masked old man pondered for a while and smiled. Qin Feiyong frowned. He asked secretly, Senior, do you have any ideas? If you use the royal tutor or the young prince to threaten him, there's no doubt that it'll be a long tug of war. After all, he's the emperor of a nation. He won't be able to put down his pride in front of so many people. You can try another method. Who knows, it might be more effective than this one. The masked old man said. Try another method. Qin Feiyong muttered to himself. After a while, he cupped his fists and said, Thank you for your advice, Senior. Huff. Next, he exhaled deeply. With a thought, the 9-leaf fire lotus and the crimson sword soul that were protecting him returned to his sea of qi. His gaze also turned cold and sharp. No matter what he had gone through, at least he had achieved his wish. From now on, he would have nothing to do with the emperor. Swoosh. He lowered his head and looked at the crowd below. Finally, his gaze fell on the emperor. His expression was no longer filled with pain and sadness. Instead, it was cold. It was as though he was looking at a stranger. Do you know what this is? Qin Feiyong waved his arm. The divine dragon seal hovering before him immediately expanded in the wind. Streams of terrifying aura surged out crazily, covering the sky and covering the earth as they rushed in all directions. Rumble. Finally, the divine dragon seal grew to several thousand feet in size. It was like a towering mountain. With the deafening sound of wind and thunder, it pressed down on the emperor. As they looked at the divine dragon seal, the emperor, Old Qin, and the other false gods felt even more puzzled. What was that? Why did it give them a sense of déjà vu? Meanwhile, Lu Xingqian, who was hiding in the spatial divine item, looked at the divine dragon seal. A strange light flashed in the depths of his eyes. How familiar. A hint of confusion could be seen on the mysterious madam's face as well. What's that? Mu Qing was puzzled. I can't remember. The mysterious madam shook her head. It's the first form of the divine dragon technique, the divine dragon seal. At this moment, a slightly agitated voice rang in the air. The person who spoke was Qin Feiyang's mother. She was also looking at the divine dragon seal with a bright smile on her face. Divine dragon seal. However, when the emperor, old Qin, and the other false gods heard these three words, it was like a bolt from the blue. Their bodies and minds trembled. Their faces and eyes were filled with disbelief. Because of the white-clothed woman's reminder, they all remembered. They also finally knew what the purple-gold blood that flowed out of Qin Feiyang's body was. Mu Qing looked at the expressions of the emperor and the others. She turned to the white-clothed woman and asked, "Auntie, what is the divine dragon technique?" The divine dragon technique is a battle technique created by the Qin emperor. Back then, he was able to suppress all the heroes mainly because of this divine dragon technique. And this divine dragon technique has already surpassed the boundary of a perfect battle technique. This time, it was the mysterious madam who spoke. There was a deep fear and shock in her eyes. It seemed that she was quite familiar with the Qin emperor. Surpassed the boundary of a perfect battle technique? Mu Qing's eyes widened in anger. Wasn't this the legendary divine technique? In other words, this bastard, after destroying his bloodline power, not only did his previous talent not disappear, but he also obtained a great fortune? Not only did his talent not disappear, it is even more terrifying than before. I can even predict that another Qin emperor is about to rise. Chapter 930. The divine dragon seal descended from the sky, and the dragon aura surged, shocking everyone present. The emperor's expression was quite ferocious at this moment. He suddenly rushed into the sky and shattered the divine dragon seal with a punch. This aura is exactly the same as the legendary divine dragon seal. His face was slightly dazed, and then he rushed into the sky and stood opposite Qin Feiyang. "Quickly tell me, where did you get the inheritance of your ancestor?" He looked a little exasperated at this moment. "What's wrong? Are you feeling unbalanced?" "That's true. To think that you, the emperor of the great Qin Empire, didn't get the divine dragon technique, and now that I got it, you must feel bad." The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted, and he looked at him mockingly. The emperor's face was gloomy. "Although you are the emperor, you don't have the purple gold dragon soul, purple gold dragon blood, or divine dragon technique. To be honest, I really feel sorry for you." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Enough." The emperor shouted angrily. "Did I say anything wrong? Having the purple gold dragon soul, purple gold dragon blood, and divine dragon technique is the most orthodox descendant of the Qin emperor." Qin Feiyang sneered. The emperor's eyes turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, "So, you plan to kill your father and usurp the throne?" "Haha." Qin Feiyang suddenly raised his head and laughed unscrupulously. "Father? Wasn't this word a little too funny? Let me tell you, I have no interest in this bullshit emperor's position. I only care about my mother and my friends. Tell me, what do I have to do to make you promise not to hurt them?" Qin Feiyang said, "As long as you tell me where the inheritance came from, not only will I promise you not to hurt them in the future, but I will also make you the crown prince." The emperor said, "Your Majesty, please reconsider. Qin Feiyang is now in a state of qi deviation. We can't let him come back." The current empress's face changed, and she hurriedly persuaded. If Qin Feiyang was made the crown prince, then what about the little prince? She would never allow such a thing to happen. Celestial Empress is right. The current Qin Feiyang is already blinded by hatred. If he is crowned as the crown prince, not only will the little prince suffer in the future, I'm afraid that even the other princesses will be harmed by him. Zhuge Mingyang knelt in the void and said respectfully to the emperor. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at Zhuge Mingyang. What does it have to do with this person that the emperor conferred him the title of crown prince? Yes, Zhuge Mingyang was once the #1 monstrous genius in the imperial capital, and he was also the only son of Zhuge Wuhou. The emperor valued him greatly. But at the end of the day, he was just a subject. What right did he have to jump out and dissuade the emperor? Not to mention, even old Qin and the other semi-divinities had yet to express their opinions, so why would he rush out in such a hurry? In the meantime, the masked old man sized up Zhuge Mingyang with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Shut up, all of you. But in the face of the current celestial empress and Zhuge Mingyang's advice, the emperor's face showed extreme impatience. Right now, he only wanted to know where the inheritance of the divine dragon technique came from. Suddenly, Mu Qing's eyes flashed as he looked at Qin Feiyong and smiled. Brother Qin, I have a suggestion. Speak, Qin Feiyong said. Mu Qing said, let Zhuge Mingyang have a life and death battle with you. If you lose, tell him where the inheritance came from. Zhuge Mingyang's pupils shrank. Qin Feiyong's eyes lit up as he nodded and said, good idea. Of course, he knew Mu Qing's inner thoughts. He wanted to use his hands to get rid of Zhuge Mingyang and avenge Mu Shuer, but even if he was used by Mu Qing now, he didn't care. Because he also wanted to get rid of Zhuge Mingyang. He always felt that if this Zhuge Mingyang didn't die, he would pose a great threat to him sooner or later. So, it was better to take this opportunity to get rid of future troubles forever. How about this suggestion? If I lose, I'll tell you everything you want to know. But if I win, I want you to personally draw up a contract and announce it to the world. Qin Feiyong looked at the emperor and said. The emperor turned his head to look at Zhuge Mingyang, his expression uncertain. He was very clear about Zhuge Mingyang's strength. In the entire Great Qin Empire, almost no one in the younger generation was his opponent. But he knew Qin Feiyong's strength better. A few years ago, he suppressed his realm and fought with Qin Feiyong. But in the end, he was defeated by Qin Feiyong. This proved that with Qin Feiyong's ability, it was sufficient for him to reign supreme in the same realm. If Qin Feiyong's cultivation was weaker than Zhuge Mingyang's, he wouldn't hesitate. But now, Qin Feiyong was also a one-star battle saint and had mastered the ancestors' divine dragon art. And he also had the six-word divine art. If the two of them fought, he didn't have much confidence in Zhuge Mingyang. I really didn't expect that there would be a time when you don't dare to nod. Qin Feiyong shook his head. The sarcasm on his face was undisguised. The emperor clenched his hands. Why don't you do it? Just like a few years ago, suppress your cultivation to the same realm as mine. Qin Feiyong laughed mockingly. The emperor's face was ashen. The battle a few years ago could be said to be the stain of his life. Although the people in the imperial capital didn't dare to talk about it in front of him, they gossiped a lot behind his back. Sometimes, he even heard some palace maids and guards talking about it in private. Every time he heard these discussions, he felt a sense of shame in his heart. It was like a sharp blade was ruthlessly stabbing into his heart, making him feel very uncomfortable. And now, Qin Feiyong once again brought up this matter in front of everyone. The anger in his heart soared straight up to a critical point. Qin Feiyong, don't go too far. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at the emperor, stared at Qin Feiyong and shouted, do you have the right to speak here? Qin Feiyong smiled contemptuously. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were gloomy to the extreme. He bowed and said, Your Majesty, I accept his challenge. The emperor was stunned. Qin Feiyong was stunned. Mu Qing's face was also filled with shock. After fighting with Qin Feiyong for so many years, Mu Qing was very clear about Qin Feiyong's strength. In the battle between Zhuge Mingyang and Qin Feiyong, there was no chance of victory at all. He thought that Zhuge Mingyang wouldn't have the guts to accept, but he didn't expect that he would accept. Where did he get the courage to fight with Qin Feiyong? Your Majesty, although I may not be his opponent, I'm willing to defend your dignity with my life. Zhuge Mingyang knelt in the void and said firmly. There was a determined light in his eyes. Good. The emperor nodded repeatedly. He was very happy. In fact, he had no other choice now. Because in the whole younger generation of the imperial capital, only Zhuge Mingyang had the ability to fight with Qin Feiyong. What do you want to do? Qin Feiyong murmured. Zhuge Mingyang's attitude was really too abnormal. To please the emperor? But for Zhuge Mingyang, it didn't seem to be necessary at all. Because the emperor thought highly of him. For other young talents, if they wanted to enter the imperial palace, They had to be notified and approved. But every time Zhuge Mingying entered the imperial palace, he didn't notify anyone. For example, this time, he came as he pleased. And when the emperor saw Zhuge Mingying barging in without permission, he didn't say anything. It was equivalent to acquiescing that Zhuge Mingying could enter and leave the imperial palace freely. For a subject of the Great Qin Empire, this could be said to be a kind of supreme honor. Qin Feiyong couldn't figure it out. What was Zhuge Mingying thinking? Whoosh! Just when Qin Feiyong was puzzled, Zhuge Mingying got up and rushed to the emperor's side. Boom! His aura exploded. Come on. I will prove to the world that I, Zhuge Mingying, am the #1 evildoer of the imperial capital. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said word by word. His aura was like a rainbow, shaking the sky. #1 evildoer. Qin Feiyong murmured, his body shook violently, and the saint's aura roared in all directions. The emperor and the masked old man both retreated to the distance at the same time. But before the emperor retreated, he said such a sentence. You are not allowed to use any weapons. Because Changshui and the ancient castle, the lethality was too shocking. If Qin Feiyong took out these two artifacts, Zhuge Mingying wouldn't even have the slightest resistance. So, he wanted to put an end to this situation. Qin Feiyong glanced at the emperor and said lightly, You worry too much, just Zhuge Mingying, I don't need to use weapons. Arrogant. Zhuge Mingying was furious. With the billowing saint's aura, he took a step forward, raised his fist, and threw a punch at Qin Feiyong. Yes, I am arrogant, because I am no longer the Qin Feiyong of the past. Qin Feiyong roared, raised his arm, and threw a punch without dodging. Boom! The two fists met with a loud bang. A destructive airwave, like a tide, rolled out in all directions with the two of them as the center. At this moment, the void within a few miles twisted crazily, as if it was about to shatter. Humph! The two of them snorted at the same time, and their bodies retreated uncontrollably. I remember that in the Black Dragon Swamp, you forced us into a desperate situation with your own strength and almost killed us. But now? Is this all you've got? Qin Feiyong stepped into the void, stabilized his body, and then roared and rushed toward Zhuge Mingying again. I only hate that I didn't kill you back then. Zhuge Mingying's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He pushed his hands out, and a majestic battle chi roared out. That battle chi was very special. It was green in color. At first glance, it looked like an ancient green dragon, roaring in the sky, containing a shocking destructive force. And that battle chi also exuded a strong dragon's aura. What? Qin Feiyong's pupils contracted. As everyone knew, the aura of battle chi was based on the battle soul. Battle chi that contained dragon's aura. Could it be that Zhuge Mingying had also activated some kind of dragon soul? Boom! He clenched his fist, and the flaming battle chi surged out. At this moment, his whole body was burning with raging flames, as if he had turned into a man of fire. I would like to see how capable you are. Immediately, Qin Feiyong squinted his eyes, and a sharp light flashed, and he punched toward Zhuge Mingying's battle chi. Accompanied by a loud bang, the roaring battle chi was dispersed. This dragon's aura. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. After activating the purple gold dragon soul and purple gold dragon blood, he was very sensitive to dragon's aura. When he touched Zhuge Mingying's battle chi, he could clearly feel that the dragon's aura contained in the battle chi was not an ordinary dragon's aura. The dragon's aura was very pure, and it gave people a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 931. Qin Feiyong stabilized himself in the air. Looking at Zhuge Mingying opposite him, he said, I didn't expect you to have also activated the dragon soul. There are still many things you can't imagine. Zhuge Mingying smiled coldly. The battle chi in his chi sea poured out, covering the sky and rushing towards Qin Feiyong. Is that so? Qin Feiyong's body shook. The flame battle chi emerged, the fire waves rolling, sweeping across the sky. At this moment, he was like a fire god, standing in the flames, his long hair fluttering in the wind. You've already piqued my interest. I hope you won't disappoint me in the end. Qin Feiyong pointed to the sky. The fire waves around his body immediately rushed towards Mu Qing's battle chi. It was like a giant flame python, dozens of feet long, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, fierce and threatening. Boom! The two battle chi collided, exploding with an earth-shattering sound. At the same time, both of their bodies trembled, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of their mouths. Bang, bang, bang. But the two of them did not stop at all and rushed towards each other again. Immediately, a hand-to-hand battle unfolded in the sky. Neither of them used any battle arts, nor activated their battle souls. Their fists hit the flesh, and it was difficult to tell who was the winner. In terms of strength alone, Zhuge Mingyang is not inferior to Qin Feiyang. To be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Qin Feiyang, this child is also an amazing person, Lady Mysterious whispered. I don't deny his strength. But now, Qin Feiyang is only warming up. The real means are yet to come. Mu Qing stared firmly at Zhuge Mingyang, the murderous intent in his eyes growing stronger. Boom. Gotcha. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Zhuge Mingyang, their speed was at the extreme. The two of them constantly collided in the sky. Those below the battle sage realm could not catch their figures at all, and could only hear the deafening collision sounds. About 100 breaths passed. The battle between the two had already reached its climax. It was unprecedentedly intense. This was also Qin Feiyang's first time fighting to his heart's content. He felt that the blood in his body was about to boil. Her fighting spirit soared to the heavens. Zhuge Mingyang didn't back down either. Like a god of war, the more he fought, the braver he became. Bang! Another few hundred breaths passed. After a fierce collision, the two of them finally separated. They stood at the top of the clouds and looked at each other. There were wounds of varying degrees on their bodies. However, there was no sign of weakness between their brows, and the aura they exuded was even more powerful. It's been so long, the warm-up should be over. Can we get serious now? Qin Feiyang spoke. His eyes were like lightning, appearing extremely fierce. As you wish. Azure Dragon's secret art, dragons roar to the heavens. Zhuge Mingyang raised his head and roared. Battle chi surged out of his body. Ding! Following a loud dragon roar, an enormous beast appeared in the sky. It was an azure divine dragon. It was a few hundred zhang long, like a mountain ridge, flying above Zhuge Mingyang's head. Tear him apart. Next, Zhuge Mingyang pointed at Qin Feiyang from afar. Murderous intent flickered in his eyes. That mystical dragon immediately turned around and charged towards Qin Feiyang with a monstrous aura. Qin Feiyang's eyes glinted. With his current strength, he could tell at a glance that the so-called Azure Dragon secret art was a perfect battle art. Furthermore, it had reached the peak of a perfect battle art. In other words, the Azure Dragon secret art alone was enough to make Zhuge Mingyang the strongest among those of the same cultivation level. But this time, Zhuge Mingyang was unlucky to have encountered him. The fourth style of the Oasis technique, Oasis End. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and pointed his index finger in the air. An invisible force immediately roared out. The fourth style of the Oasis technique could also unleash the destructive power of a perfect battle art. Boom! Following a thunderous explosion, the two battle arts clashed in the air, emitting a blinding light. Heaven and earth lost their color at this moment. Puff! Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Their faces were slightly pale. That's all there is to it. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. What's the rush? The best part is yet to come. Zhuge Mingyang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and placed his hands in front of his chest, quickly forming seals. A destructive aura spread out from his hands like a volcanic eruption. Almost at the next moment, an eye appeared in between his hands. The eye was tightly shut. It was the size of a pebble and emitted waves of dragon aura, just like the eye of a dragon. That destructive aura had originated from that eye. Azure Dragon Secret Art, Second Style. Azure Dragon Eye, Destruction. Zhuge Mingyang let out a low roar. His eyes suddenly opened and shot out a bright beam of light. As soon as the light beam appeared, the destructive aura became even more terrifying. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. The destructive power contained in the light beam was almost at the critical point of a perfect battle art and a god technique. He also stopped looking down on them. After all, as the former #1 monster in the imperial capital, how could he not have some trump cards? If he was careless, he might suffer a great loss. Guiyuan sword technique. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and a red sword aura surged out, rushing into the sky like a waterfall. Clang! In the blink of an eye, 40 flaming sword shadows condensed. Each of them was dozens of feet long and emitted a destructive aura. The number of sword shadows formed by the Guiyuan sword technique was completely dependent on his cultivation level. Battle Monarch, 10. Battle Emperor, 20. Battle Master, 30. Now that he had broken through to the Battle Saint level, he could form 40 sword shadows. 40 sword shadows were equivalent to 40 killing moves. This was not something that an ordinary person could bear. It could even be said that even if one's cultivation level was higher than Qin Feiyong's, they might not be able to bear it. In short, the higher Qin Feiyong's cultivation level, the more terrifying the power of the Guiyuan sword technique. Clang! When the 40 sword shadows appeared, Qin Feiyong controlled a sword shadow and slashed at the light beam. Boom! Crack! Accompanied by a loud sound, the sword shadow was instantly shattered by the light beam. Qin Feiyong's body trembled, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. In his heart, he was also quite surprised. Once, he had also faced many strong enemies. For example, in the 9 Nether Yellow Springs, he fought with the monsters of the 9 prefectures. The methods of these monsters were obvious to everyone, but as long as their cultivation level was not higher than Qin Feiyong's, they would not be able to block the Guiyuan sword technique. However, at this moment, that beam of light seemed to have destroyed one of his sword shadows effortlessly, but its power was not just ordinary frightening. I said, the good show is yet to come. Looking at Qin Feiyong's shocked expression, Zhuge Mingyang's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. Isn't it a bit too early to be complacent? Qin Feiyong sneered, and the sword shadows above his head slashed at the light beam one after another. Clang! The sword shadows kept shattering. Waves of destructive air waves rolled out in all directions like a tide. The void within a radius of dozens of miles was crazily distorted. Even the sky was trembling. Qin Feiyong stood in the void, and his face was getting paler and paler. Because every time a sword shadow was shattered, his body would suffer a heavy blow. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. But he was like Mount Tai, motionless. Look at Zhuge Mingyang. Although he had the upper hand, there was not a trace of joy on his face. Even the disdain he showed before had disappeared and was replaced by a trace of seriousness. And if one looked carefully, one would find that his hands on his chest were slightly trembling. It was obvious. Those sword shadows also caused him a lot of pressure. Boom! When the 20th sword shadow slashed at the light beam finally collapsed. Puff! The Azure Dragon's eye was also shattered. Zhuge Mingyang also spat out a mouthful of blood. I'd like to see how you're going to take the remaining 20 sword shadows. Qin Feiyong sneered. The 20 sword shadows all moved in an instant and slashed at Zhuge Mingyang. Looking at this scene, the Emperor's heart sank. Zhuge Mingyang's performance was not bad, but anyone with a discerning eye could see that he was not as good as Qin Feiyong. You shouldn't have bet on Zhuge Mingyang. Mu Qing looked at the Emperor, without the slightest respect and full of sarcasm. The Emperor glanced at him coldly, but said nothing. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang again, and the hands hidden in the sleeves were already clenched. Clang! In the blink of an eye, the 20 sword shadows had already appeared above Zhuge Mingyang. The terrifying sharpness tore his skin. In an instant, he became a bloody man. However, Zhuge Mingyang's expression did not show the slightest panic or fear. He stared at the 20 sword shadows, his eyes flashing fiercely. Suddenly, he leaped, not retreating, but advancing, taking the initiative to meet the 20 sword shadows with his flesh and blood. What? Does he want to die? Qin Feiyong's gaze trembled. Mu Qing and the others below were also stunned. One must know, each of these sword shadows was comparable to a perfect battle art. In other words, with Qin Feiyong's current cultivation, The power of each sword shadow was comparable to a full blow from a 5-star battle saint. And Zhuge Mingyang was only a 1-star battle saint, yet he wanted to meet it with his flesh and blood. If this was not courting death, what was? Zhuge Mingyang, don't be rash. Old Qin could not help but shout. But Zhuge Mingyang turned a deaf ear to him, the fierceness in his eyes becoming more intense. Qin Feiyang, now I'll show you my true strength. The third move, Green Dragon Celestial Phenomenon. With a roar, he raised his fist and punched the 20 sword shadows. Qin Feiyang stared at Zhuge Mingyang. Although he did not know much about Zhuge Mingyang's character, he would definitely not bluff. Perhaps this person really had something to rely on. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes showed a trace of surprise. Just before Zhuge Mingyang's fist met the 20 sword shadows, Zhuge Mingyang's fist suddenly rushed out a gust of battle qi. Following closely, that gust of battle qi turned into a green dragon, crushing the 20 sword shadows as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The whole process took less than half a breath, and all the sword shadows turned into ashes. How is this possible? Qin Feiyang spat out blood, his eyes full of disbelief. Mu Qing and the others below were also shocked. In an instant, 20 sword shadows were crushed. What level of battle art was this green dragon secret art? Divine art? Chapter 932. At this moment, the bright sky palace fell into a dead silence. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Zhuge Mingyang in disbelief, including Yiglao, Old Qin, and the other false gods. The strength that Zhuge Mingyang displayed was far beyond their expectations. They thought that Zhuge Mingyang wouldn't have much power to fight back against the monstrous Qin Feiyang. However, they didn't expect that Qin Feiyang would be suppressed by Zhuge Mingyang instead. The shock in Qin Feiyang's heart couldn't dissipate for a long time. Without a doubt, this Azure Dragon secret art must be a divine art. Zhuge Mingyang actually mastered a divine art. This was too unbelievable. Roar. At the same time, after crushing the 20 sword shadows, the Azure Dragon didn't disappear and turned to roar at Qin Feiyang. Its momentum was earth-shattering and terrifying, and its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it swept in front of Qin Feiyang and crashed into Qin Feiyang's chest. Poof! Qin Feiyang spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying on the spot, and his chest was badly mutilated, with purple gold blood flowing out. His internal organs were also seriously injured. If you had used all your strength from the beginning, you wouldn't have fallen to this point. So, don't underestimate anyone, especially me, Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang stood proudly in the air and looked at Qin Feiyang contemptuously. He shouted, "Destroy him for me!" Roar. The Azure Dragon roared and rushed at Qin Feiyang again, the dragon's aura rolling in all directions. Qin Feiyang felt a deadly sense of crisis even before he got close. He finally came to his senses, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Boom! He raised his arm without hesitation and slammed his palm in the air. Return formula. A golden light emerged from his palm and turned into a huge wave that rushed at the Azure Dragon. Rumble. With a loud bang, the golden light and the Azure Dragon were locked in a stalemate in the void. The destructive aura shook the heavens. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. It could actually contend with the return formula. If this Azure Dragon secret art was not a divine secret art, then what was it? A divine art. Where did Zhuge Mingyang get it? Self-created? That was impossible. It wasn't that he looked down on Zhuge Mingyang, but that the divine art was too profound. In this world, it was likely that only deities would understand the profound meaning of deity arts. Only by knowing the profound would one have the chance to create a divine art. Like him, although he had mastered the 6-word divine formula and the divine dragon formula, he was not very clear about the profoundness of these two divine formulas. Therefore, this Azure Dragon secret art must have been obtained by Zhuge Mingyang by chance. But where was it? The great Qin Empire had a divine art? Or was the Azure Dragon secret art given to Zhuge Mingyang by someone? Given? At this point, he suddenly thought of Elder Qin. the state preceptor, and the other 4 false gods. Because these 5 were all false gods, they might really have some divine arts. However, when he looked at the 5 of them, he found that Elder Qin and the state preceptor were both shocked. Obviously, they only just found out. As for the other 3, although they were shrouded in black mist and their expressions could not be seen, it was definitely not them. Because if the Azure Dragon's secret art was really taught to Zhuge Mingyang by them, then the state preceptor and Elder Qin would definitely know. After all, they were all false gods of the great Qin Empire, so they must be very familiar with each other. The most important point was, although they were all false gods, in the great Qin Empire, the emperor was the one with the real power. Therefore, no matter what they wanted to do, they had to ask the emperor first. This was the system. No matter how strong you were, no matter how long you lived, you had to maintain a certain level of respect for the emperor. But now, the emperor was also surprised. Therefore, he could basically conclude that the Azure Dragon's secret art had nothing to do with these people. Oh well. Just as Qin Feiyang was puzzled, the stalemate was finally broken. The Azure Dragon suddenly howled and turned around, crashing into Zhuge Mingyang's body like lightning. Ah! Zhuge Mingyang let out a blood-curdling scream as his entire body flew out like a meteorite. The skin on his body instantly cracked and blood splattered into the sky. It seems that the divine art that I have mastered is still stronger. Qin Feiyang's spirit was greatly boosted as he immediately rushed towards Zhuge Mingyang with monstrous killing intent. Seeing how powerful Zhuge Mingyang was, he did not dare to drag it on any longer. Because he was worried that this person might still have some tricks up his sleeve, so he had to end this battle as soon as possible. And now, Zhuge Mingyang was severely injured by his divine art, which was undoubtedly a good opportunity. You lost just like that? The emperor muttered. Zhuge Mingyang's performance did not disappoint him. After all, his opponent was Qin Feiyang. It was already very good for him to be able to fight like this. But he was not satisfied that he could not get an answer from Qin Feiyang. Shui, the person who killed you will soon get his retribution. You can rest in peace. Mu Qing was also muttering to herself with a trace of relief on her face. All these years, because of Mu Shui's death, he had been living in self-blame and guilt, unable to find peace at all. Although he did not kill Zhuge Mingyang with his own hands, he still had a part of the credit. It could be considered as revenge for this blood feud. Not only the emperor and Mu Qing, but at this moment, everyone present thought that Zhuge Mingyang had reached the end of his road. Your Majesty, Zhuge Mingyang is a talent. We can't let him die in the hands of Qin Feiyang. Let him admit defeat quickly. Yes, if he is trained well, he will definitely do something in the future. In the future, he may even be the only one who can stop Qin Feiyang. Elder Qin and the other fake gods were secretly transmitting voice messages to the emperor, looking extremely anxious. The emperor was in a dilemma. But in the end, he listened to Elder Qin and the others and shouted, Zhuge Mingyang, I order you to admit defeat immediately. Admit defeat? Hearing this, Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Instead of stopping, he used the phantom steps to maximize his speed. No matter what, he had to kill this person today. However, Zhuge Mingyang did not show any signs of admitting defeat at all. His eyes were sharper than before. Boom. Suddenly, he stepped into the void, stabilized his body, looked down at the emperor and said, Your Majesty, I'm sorry, I can't obey. How dare you? The emperor was angry. I, Zhuge Mingyang, have never admitted defeat in my life. Especially in front of Qin Feiyang. I can't admit defeat. Zhuge Mingyang said word by word, his eyes filled with determination. Finished. He ignored the emperor and looked up at Qin Feiyang, shouting, Today, one of you must die here. Qin Feiyang coldly smiled and said, That's what I think too. Then let's fight. Zhuge Mingyang was so angry that his hair stood on end. A terrifying dragon's might roared out from his body. Roar. Immediately after, a behemoth rushed out from behind him. That divine dragon was hundreds of feet long, covered with blue dragon scales the size of a dustpan, and 4 dragon claws under its abdomen, obviously hard and powerful. Azure Dragon. Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank. According to legend, In ancient times, there were 4 divine beasts that could overturn rivers and seas and cover the sky with one hand. They were the azure dragon, white tiger, black tortoise, and vermilion bird. Although these 4 divine beasts were not as powerful as the purple gold divine dragon, in the eyes of the world, they were godlike existences. Who would have thought that Zhuge Mingyang would actually activate the Azure Dragon Fighting Soul? Azure Dragon Fighting Soul, coupled with the powerful Azure Dragon Secret Art, this Zhuge Mingyang was simply impeccable. Roar. Looking at the roaring Azure Dragon Fighting Soul in the sky, many people felt a sense of awe. But Qin Feiyong, on the other hand, was boiling with battle intent. Clang. With a giant sword that could tear the sky and earth apart, a red sword soul appeared. Kill. Both of them shouted at the same time. The Azure Dragon Fighting Soul and the red sword soul pierced through the sky, crazily colliding in the void. The dragon might was torrential, and the sword radiance was boundless. The 2 fighting souls carried the will of their respective masters, competing against each other, neither of them wanting to be at a disadvantage. What the hell is this bastard doing? Mu Qing was extremely angry. The Qin Feiyong in front of him was not the Qin Feiyong he knew. Just a mere Zhuge Mingyang. How could he not be able to deal with it? You can't blame Qin Feiyong for this. You can only say that Zhuge Mingyang is too strong. Madame Mystery whispered. Of course. The Qin Feiyong they knew didn't only have this many tricks up his sleeve. High up in the sky, the 2 fighting souls were locked in a fierce battle, and every time they collided, as the masters, Qin Feiyong and Zhuge Mingyang, as if they were struck by lightning, streaks of blood constantly flowed from the corners of their mouths. Roar. Suddenly, a loud beast roar resounded, shaking the sky. Next, the flaming beast shadow roared out from the red sword soul, exuding a terrifying, ferocious aura. Every time I see this flaming beast shadow, I feel that it's unbelievable. Yeah, there's a beast soul hidden in the sword soul. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. In the space divine item, Dong Zhengyang and the others looked at the sword soul and the beast shadow on the screen, exclaiming in amazement. I don't know if you guys have noticed that the beast shadow contains a trace of divine aura. At the same time, Elder Qin, who was outside, secretly transmitted a message to the 3 false gods shrouded in black fog. The 3 of them stared at the flaming beast shadow and nodded slightly. Roar. Clang. As soon as the flaming beast shadow appeared, it and the red sword soul pounced on the Azure Dragon Fighting Soul, and the aura of the flaming beast shadow was even stronger than that of the sword soul. In less than half a blink of an eye, the beast shadow and the sword soul had both arrived. The Azure Dragon Fighting Soul immediately suffered a devastating blow. Its huge body quickly cracked and collapsed. It kept wailing, just like Zhuge Mingyang, whose eyes were filled with unwillingness. He had tried his best, but why was he still no match for Qin Feiyong? Could it be that Qin Feiyong was really unbeatable? He was not convinced. He, Zhuge Mingyang, was the #1 demon in the imperial capital. What was Qin Feiyong? Innate ability, destruction. He roared towards the sky, his long hair fluttering. The Azure Dragon Fighting Soul disintegrated, but it did not dissipate, turning into an obscure aura. This aura was formless and colorless, like a raging wave in the ocean, instantly sweeping across the sky and drowning Qin Feiyong. When this aura enveloped him, Qin Feiyong's expression changed. His cultivation had actually dropped by a realm. From a 1-star battle saint, he instantly fell to a 9-star battle master. How could this be? Chapter 933. How could Qin Feiyong's cultivation suddenly fall to the 9-star war sect? Could it be because of Zhuge Mingyang's Azure Dragon Fighting Spirit's innate ability? You must be surprised. This is the innate ability of the Azure Dragon Fighting Spirit. Whether it's a human or a beast, as long as they enter this domain formed by the Azure Dragon Fighting Spirit, their cultivation will drop by a small realm. Although it's only a temporary drop, it's enough to kill you. Now, in the face of the difference in cultivation, what else can you use to fight me? Zhuge Mingyang laughed out loud and rushed forward like lightning. With a single punch, he shattered the Scarlet Sword spirit. His battle strength was unparalleled. The strength of the war soul was determined by the master's cultivation. The stronger the master's cultivation, the stronger the war soul. Now, Qin Feiyang's cultivation had been weakened by a realm, so the power of the Scarlet Sword spirit had naturally dropped by a level. After the Scarlet Sword spirit shattered, the flaming beast shadow also dissipated. However, Zhuge Mingyang did not stop at all and continued to attack Qin Feiyang. He stepped on the perfect battle technique and his speed was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, he landed in front of Qin Feiyang. Without any mercy, he punched towards Qin Feiyang's chest. Wah! Qin Feiyang spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out like a meteorite. His chest was also spurting blood. His heart was even more shattered. The intense pain caused his face to contort. I, Zhuge Mingyang, am the true prodigy, Zhuge Mingyang said. And you, Qin Feiyang, are just lucky to be born in a good family. You've been the center of attention since you were young. Compared to me, you're still far from it. Zhuge Mingyang roared and caught up to Qin Feiyang in a few steps. Then, he stomped on Qin Feiyang's chest. Boom! Kacha! Qin Feiyang howled in pain and crashed into a palace below. The palace was instantly shattered. He smashed into the ground, causing dust to fly everywhere. The ground cracked, and a huge crater that was dozens of feet wide appeared on the ground. As for his heart, it had already shattered into pieces. Defeated, Mu Qing looked at the scene in disbelief. In his eyes, Qin Feiyang had always been an invincible existence in the same realm. But now, he was defeated by Zhuge Mingyang. Was this a dream? When did Qin Feiyang, who had always been invincible, become so weak and unbearable? Innate ability, destruction? In the face of such a terrifying innate ability, there is no one in the younger generation who can compete with him. Not even Qin Feiyang. The Mu clan's ancestor whispered. His old eyes were filled with disbelief. Mu Qing's all-seeing eye and Qin Feiyang's 3 fighting souls were already powerful enough. However, Zhuge Mingyang's Azure Dragon fighting soul was even more terrifying than theirs. At this moment, no one dared to look down on Zhuge Mingyang anymore. Even the fake gods had a solemn look on their faces. Although this innate ability could only weaken one's realm, it was enough to kill anyone. The scene fell into a dead silence once again. Huff! Zhuge Mingyang let out a long breath. His body slowly sank and landed on top of the huge crater. Then, he waved his hand and a gust of wind whistled in this place. The dust that filled the sky was quickly blown away. Qin Feiyang was seen lying at the bottom of the huge crater. He was barely breathing and dripping with blood. His entire chest was deeply sunken, and his flesh was badly mutilated. Did you see that? This is my strength. No matter how you struggle, you can't escape the fate of death. And from this moment onwards, the title of the #1 monster in the Great Qin Empire no longer belongs to you, Zhuge Mingyang said. His expression was full of arrogance and contempt. The title of the #1 monster, Qin Feiyang muttered to himself and suddenly laughed. There was a touch of ridicule on his blood-stained face. Seeing that Qin Feiyang could still laugh, Zhuge Mingyang's eyebrows twitched. But then, he shook his head, smiled, and said, "No matter if it was in the past or now, you are only a stepping stone under my feet. And now, your mission has been completed. You can leave this world." Stepping stone. Qin Feiyang looked at the sky, and a touch of ferocity gradually appeared in his eyes. In this world, there was actually someone who dared to use him, Qin Feiyang, as a stepping stone? Don't take yourself too seriously. In fact, in the eyes of others, you are nothing. No, I shouldn't say that. After all, you have the bloodline power of His Majesty. However, you are just an insignificant, pitiful worm. No one loves you, no one protects you, and no one cares about you. Zhuge Mingyang smiled disdainfully, raised his arm, and the battle chi surged on his fingertips. Wait, but at this time, the emperor opened his mouth and coldly shouted, looking at Qin Feiyang, "Now that you have lost, you can tell me." Defeated? Qin Feiyang slowly got up, grinned at the emperor, and said, Are you sure I have lost? The emperor frowned and said in a deep voice, Don't fight like a cornered beast. Haha. Qin Feiyang looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. At this time, they used the words cornered beast to describe him. Weren't these people too naive? The purple-gold dragon blood in his body burned. On the surface of his body, there were wisps of purple-gold flames rising. The broken heart and the injuries all over his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Is this another advantage of the purple-gold dragon blood? Qin Feiyang whispered. The purple-gold dragon blood flowing in his body was like a spring of life, providing an endless stream of vitality. Moreover, although the power of his bloodline was crippled, the merged fire of life was still there. Now, even if he did not open the battle character secret, he could still have a true immortal body. You don't have the ability to kill me. Qin Feiyang shouted angrily, and his aura surged wildly. The domain formed by the Azure Dragon War Soul showed signs of being unable to suppress him. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes widened. Why was this fellow's vitality so tenacious? Boom! Accompanied by a wave of fire, the nine-leaf fire lotus charged toward Qin Feiyang from behind. The sky above the imperial palace instantly turned into a sea of fire. Raging flames surged, and waves of fire surged, illuminating the heavens and the earth. Explode! Qin Feiyang shouted. The 9 fire lotus leaves fell off in an instant and shot toward Zhuge Mingyang. It's useless. Zhuge Mingyang shook his head, looking extremely arrogant. He pressed his hand down in the air, and the Azure Dragon War Chi turned into a waterfall that fell from the sky and collided with the 9 fire lotus leaves. The 9 fire lotus leaves exploded at the same time. Boom! Crack! A world-destroying aura suddenly spread out in this place. The ground shattered, and the palace collapsed. If the emperor and the others did not make a move in time, half of the imperial palace would have been destroyed in an instant. Spurt! At the same time, Zhuge Mingyang spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned paler. It's still so destructive? His heart was filled with shock. You should know who you're being arrogant in front of now. Qin Feiyang shot into the sky. His skin, long hair, and eyes instantly turned blood red. At this moment, he was like a god of war who had returned, and his body exuded a shocking battle intent. That was right. He had activated the battle formula. When he arrived in front of Zhuge Mingyang, he raised his arm and threw a punch. The power contained in this group of attacks made Zhuge Mingyang's expression change. However, the domain formed by the Azure Dragon War Soul was still there, and Qin Feiyang's cultivation base was indeed at the 9-star battle sect. So, facing the difference of a realm, and being sensed by the War Master and the War Saint, he had full confidence that even if he fought with his bare hands, he would still be able to suppress Na Feiyang. He abruptly raised his arm and punched out. Bang, bang, bang. Rumble. The 2 fists collided crazily. Invisible waves of air surged out in all directions with an earth-shattering force. The close-quarters combat this time was many times more intense than the warm-up at the beginning. Both of them had used all their strength, and their bodies were dripping with blood. But in comparison, Qin Feiyang's injuries were even more severe. His entire arm had already been lacerated, and his flesh and blood were flying everywhere. However, the more he fought, the braver he became, and the more powerful he became. The domain formed by the Azure Dragon War Soul was about to collapse. Zhuge Mingyang became more and more alarmed. This person's fighting spirit and tenacity were simply unprecedented. It gave him the feeling of a fighting machine that didn't know pain or exhaustion. Even if I only have the cultivation of a 9-star battle sect, it's more than enough to deal with you. Dozens of breaths passed. Qin Feiyang raised his head and roared. Red sword chi, flaming battle chi, and purple gold dragon chi poured out. Clang! A light sword appeared out of nowhere. This was a light sword condensed from 3 types of battle chi. It was more than 1,000 feet long, and its sharpness tore through the clouds, piercing through the 9 heavens. Break for me! Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the light sword slashed down from the sky. At this moment, the void seemed to be split into 2 halves. The domain formed by the Azure Dragon War Soul had finally reached its limit and collapsed in an instant. Qin Feiyang's cultivation also instantly recovered to that of a one-star battle saint. I won't lose. I can't lose here either. Qin Feiyang, I will definitely destroy you. The domain was forcibly disintegrated, and Zhuge Mingyang also suffered a fatal injury. But his appearance was getting crazier. He rushed towards the light sword and punched the light sword. The third style of the Azure Dragon secret art, the Azure Dragon celestial phenomenon, reappeared. Clang! Against the deity art, the light sword was shattered on the spot. Qin Feiyang's body trembled. But at this moment, his eyes were even more terrifying than Zhuge Mingyang's. Destroy me? Who gave you the guts to say such words? Let me tell you today, it's not you who will destroy me. It's me who will destroy you. And I will completely destroy you. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold and piercing. Following a deafening dragon roar, the purple-gold dragon soul roared out. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang jumped up and landed on the purple-gold dragon's body. He was like a king, looking down at Zhuge Mingyang from above. Innate superpower, Emperor Divine Prison. He spat out these few words coldly. Rumble. Immediately, a mighty aura rushed out from the purple-gold dragon's soul like a volcanic eruption, instantly covering dozens of miles of the void. Inside it, there was an extremely powerful dragon and emperor's might. The Azure Dragon formed by the Azure Dragon celestial phenomenon was immediately imprisoned in the void. Zhuge Mingyang was also unable to move. Even the blood in his body stopped flowing. Not only Zhuge Mingyang, but everyone in the imperial palace below who was enveloped by this aura felt as though their bodies were frozen, unable to move. In their hearts, an uncontrollable fear emerged. Even Yiglao, Old Man Qin, and the other false gods felt a sense of oppression from the depths of their souls. Chapter 934. The prison of gods sealed all directions. Everyone turned pale at this sight. Zhuge Mingyang struggled madly, but under this pressure, he was like an ant, appearing extremely small and insignificant. I just got the inheritance of my ancestor, but do you know why I didn't use the dragon god technique? Qin Feiyang looked down at Zhuge Mingyang like a god of war riding a dragon god. Why? Zhuge Mingyang asked instinctively. Because you don't deserve it, Qin Feiyang said coldly. Don't deserve it. Zhuge Mingyang's heart trembled. The words don't deserve it almost made his state of mind collapse. The dragon god technique was a divine technique created by the first emperor. He once defeated the previous emperor Mu Tianyang with the dragon god technique. It was easy to imagine how destructive it was. If Qin Feiyang had used the dragon god technique, he would have been defeated long ago. But Qin Feiyang didn't use it. He originally thought that Qin Feiyang might not have fully mastered it. After all, it was a divine technique. How could he use it freely in such a short time? But he never thought that Qin Feiyang deliberately didn't use the dragon god technique. In other words, from the beginning to the end, Qin Feiyang didn't take him seriously. I've said it before. Today, I will completely destroy you. Now, kneel down, Qin Feiyang shouted. The pressure of the emperor prison instantly soared to another level. Zhuge Mingyang's body trembled. His legs immediately went out of his control and knelt down in the void. No, I can't kneel. In this world, except for my family and His Majesty, no one has the right to make me kneel. Zhuge Mingyang roared in his heart. For someone like Zhuge Mingyang who had a strong sense of self-esteem, kneeling to someone was more painful than killing him, especially when the person he had to kneel to was Qin Feiyang. If he knelt down now, he would live in this shadow for the rest of his life. At that time, even if he didn't die, he would lose his faith and confidence and continue to be muddle-headed. And Qin Feiyang did this because he wanted to completely crush Zhuge Mingyang mentally and spiritually, so that he would never be able to make a comeback. Kneel. Qin Feiyang enunciated every word, and the pressure he exuded grew stronger and stronger. In your dreams, Zhuge Mingyang roared hysterically. He struggled with all his might. However, no matter what he did, it was to no avail. Knees slowly bent down. His face was filled with despair. Your Majesty, quickly stopped Qin Feiyang. We can't let Zhuge Mingyang kneel here. That's right. Zhuge Mingyang is an arrogant person. If he is forced to kneel, I'm afraid he will never be able to stand up again. Zhuge Mingyang is extremely talented, and he is even more loyal to your majesty. You must protect him, your majesty. Seeing this, old Qin and the other false gods, including the current empress, hurriedly looked at the emperor and advised him anxiously. The emperor looked at Qin Feiyang and Zhuge Mingyang, his eyes extremely gloomy. Unexpectedly, in the end, Zhuge Mingyang was still defeated by Qin Feiyang. Fine. He sighed deeply, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "We admit defeat." But at the same time, Zhuge Mingyang also reached his limit. His legs bent, and he directly knelt in the void. Oh no! Old Qin and the other false gods' eyes trembled as they looked at Zhuge Mingyang with worry. The moment Zhuge Mingyang knelt down, he seemed to have lost his soul and gave up resisting. I knelt down to Qin Feiyang. Why is it like this? Qin Feiyang's cultivation was destroyed when he was 10 years old and he was expelled from the imperial capital. He was wandering outside with no one to rely on, and I have always lived in the imperial capital with endless cultivation resources. But why am I still inferior to him? Why is God so cruel to me? Since there is a jade, why is there a bright jade? Since there is a Zhuge Mingyang, why is there a Qin Feiyang? He knelt in the void and muttered to himself. His whole person looked extremely lonely. Her originally bright eyes were now empty and lifeless. High in the sky, since his goal had been achieved, Qin Feiyang also put away the purple gold dragon soul. In fact, in the beginning, he didn't have any malice towards Zhuge Mingyang. On the contrary, he admired this person, because Zhuge Mingyang was indeed a character. But he didn't expect that because of the death of the first prince, Zhuge Mingyang repeatedly targeted him. He even tried to kill him several times. He was not a saint. It was impossible for him to not fight back. And as for the current result, although he was not very satisfied, he could reluctantly accept it. Originally, he planned to directly kill Zhuge Mingyang after defeating him. But now that the emperor had admitted defeat, he naturally couldn't kill him. However, now that Zhuge Mingyang's state of mind had collapsed, no matter how good his talent was, it would be difficult for him to become a great person. In the future, he would not be a threat to him. Phew! After letting out a long breath, Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at the emperor, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Whoosh! He took a step forward and landed in front of the emperor. He sneered and said, "If you had admitted defeat earlier, Zhuge Mingyang would not have fallen to this point. It's all your fault." The emperor couldn't help but clench his hands. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. "If you agree to bet, you have to accept defeat. Quickly fulfill your promise. Wait here." The emperor suppressed his anger, flicked his sleeves, and left. Whoosh! After a while, an old man dressed in eunuch attire, holding an imperial edict, hurriedly flew over. Qin Feiyang had seen this eunuch before. He was the chief eunuch of the imperial palace. His cultivation was also not bad. He was a war king. The chief eunuch stopped in the air and bowed to Qin Feiyang. Then, he opened the imperial edict and read it out. Imperial edict. In the next 10 years, no one is allowed to harm Qin Feiyang's mother, as well as anyone related to Qin Feiyang. Those who violate this will be executed for the crime of rebellion. After reading it out, the chief eunuch closed the imperial edict and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed the imperial edict and looked at the contents. He couldn't help but frown. "Is your highness satisfied?" The chief eunuch asked cautiously. "Look at me. Do I look satisfied?" Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. The contents of this imperial edict were indeed the same as what the chief eunuch had read out. But why was it only 10 years? For an ordinary person, 10 years was 1/6 or 1/7 of their life. It was very long. But for a martial artist, 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. He had worked so hard for so long and sacrificed so much, but he only got 10 years? The chief eunuch hesitated for a while and said, "Should I ask His Majesty again?" "No need." Qin Feiyang shook his head, because he knew that the emperor would not change his mind. 10 years, although 10 years was not long, it might be enough for him. He waved his hand and put away the imperial edict. Then, he landed in front of the white-clothed woman. Your Highness, His Majesty also said that you should leave the great Qin Empire immediately. The chief eunuch hurriedly said. Scram. Qin Feiyong clenched his fists and looked up at the chief eunuch. His eyes flashed with a shocking cold light. The chief eunuch shrunk his neck and hurriedly turned to flee. You want to drive me away now? You really can't wait. Qin Feiyong smiled coldly. He retracted his gaze and looked at his mother. His gaze also softened. Son, I'm really proud of you. The white-clothed woman took out a white handkerchief and wiped the blood on Qin Feiyong's face. Her eyes were filled with love. Qin Feiyong grabbed his mother's hand and asked, Mother, are you really not leaving with me? Whether it was his tone or his expression, there was a trace of pleading and reluctance. I can't. The white-clothed woman shook her head. There was an inexplicable sadness between her eyebrows. Qin Feiyong lowered his head. Although he knew that his mother would say this, he could not help but feel disappointed. Son, you've grown up and have your own path to walk. Don't always worry about me. I'll be fine. You also work hard. I'll always be here waiting for you. The white-clothed woman said with a smile. There was a trace of reluctance in her eyes. You're the one who gave birth to me and raised me. How can I not miss you? Qin Feiyong suppressed his voice and roared. His heart was filled with sorrow that couldn't be dispelled. His mother was right in front of him, but he couldn't let his mother live a stable and peaceful life. He couldn't even be filial to his mother. He was really unqualified as a son. I understand your feelings, but the reality is so cruel. Go. When you come back next time, I believe that everything will be as you wish. The white-clothed woman endured the reluctance in her heart and smiled. Okay. Qin Feiyong nodded and turned to look at Yiglao. He said, I'll have to trouble Senior to open the space-time gate immediately. Clang. Yiglao immediately took out the space-time gate. Then, with a wave of his hand, divine power flowed into the gate. The middle-aged man also stepped forward to help. The two false gods worked together, and in less than 10 breaths, the space-time gate opened. Let's go. Yiglao urged. What about him? The great ancestor pointed at the state preceptor. The state preceptor was still under the control of the great ancestor and the second ancestor. We must let him go. Old man Qin stepped in front of the space-time gate and said with a gloomy face. The other 3 false gods also released their terrifying divine power and shrouded everyone. We didn't say that we won't let him go. Why are you so nervous? Mu Qing smiled sarcastically and turned to look at Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. With a wave of his hand, Wolf King appeared out of thin air and said lightly, Give him a farewell gift. Wolf King was stunned and turned to look at the state preceptor. His eyes suddenly crawled with a trace of a smirk. It stood up on its hind legs and swaggered over. The state preceptor has been in a sober state. When he saw Qin Feiyong call out Wolf King, he had an ominous premonition in his heart. And when he saw Wolf King walking towards him with a smirk on his face, he was even more anxious. Because Wolf King has long been notorious in the great Qin Empire and will definitely not do anything good. Put Hong. At the same time, Qin Feiyong knelt in front of the white-clothed woman and kowtowed 3 times. He whispered, Mother, you have to take care of your body. I will. The white-clothed woman nodded and smiled. Qin Feiyong took a deep look at his mother and resolutely got up, turned around and stepped in front of the space-time gate. Chapter 935. What do you want to do? The Imperial Preceptor stared at it vigilantly. Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. Brother is such a kind person. No, a wolf. Brother is such a pure and kind wolf. How could he do those dirty things, right? Wolf King said very seriously. Pure? Kind? Go to hell. Everyone present cursed in their hearts. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up. Qin Feiyong urged the Wolf King. Then, he raised his head and looked at Zhuge Mingyang, who was still kneeling in the void. Then, he entered the gate of time and space without looking back. You're lucky this time. Mu Qing looked at Zhuge Mingyang with a cold smile and followed in. Obviously, the killing intent in his heart had not disappeared. The Mu family's ancestor and second ancestor also let go of the Imperial Preceptor and stepped into the space-time gate with Yiglao, the mysterious madam, and the middle-aged man. Wolf King glanced at the audience and looked at the Imperial Preceptor again, and said with a smile, "Since we are old friends, then before we leave, I must give you a gift that you will never forget." His voice fell. A certain part of Wolf King's lower body suddenly shot out a stream of water. In an instant, everyone was dumbfounded. The priest's wife and the others were also frozen in place, their cheeks twitching nonstop. You know, the other party was the Imperial Preceptor of the Great Qin Empire and a fake god. He actually directly poured a pool of urine on his head in front of everyone. This bastard. Isn't he too cheap? This so-called gift was indeed unforgettable. The Imperial Preceptor was even more dumbfounded. He knew that this ruffian wolf would definitely humiliate him, but he didn't expect it to be in such a way. "What's with your expressions? Brother, this is holy water, guaranteed to cure all diseases. People who don't have a good relationship with me, even if they beg me, I won't give it to them." However, Wolf King not only didn't have the slightest sense of shame, but was also very dissatisfied with everyone's reaction. After peeing, it shook a certain part of its body a few times. Hearing this, everyone was completely speechless. According to what it said, wouldn't the Imperial Tutor be grateful to it? What a complete scoundrel. Yigleo and the others shook their heads and entered the spatial gate one after another. This was a stain that the State Preceptor would never be able to wash away in his lifetime. "Although the holy water is precious, we have a good relationship. You're welcome, everyone. We'll meet again if fate allows it." Wolf King patted the Grand Tutor's shoulder. His eyes were full of mockery. He then waved his claws at Old Man Qin and the others before slipping into the gate of time and space. The space-time gate also began to dissipate. Everyone glanced at the gate of time and space before turning to look at the Grand Tutor. Their faces were filled with sympathy. Encountering this ruffian wolf was truly his misfortune. The commander of the Kirin army stepped forward and bowed. "Lord State Preceptor, do you want me to take you for a bath?" "Ah." The State Preceptor finally regained his senses. Smelling the stench of urine all over his body, a monstrous rage instantly rose in his heart. "Damned beast! I swear I'll tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes," he roared angrily. To him, this was simply a great humiliation. "It's finally over." Inside the spatial divine item, the old man muttered and couldn't help but let out a long breath. "Is it over? No. This is just the beginning." Lu Xingchen shook his head. "This is just the beginning," everyone muttered. "That's right. The Emperor's edict only lasted for 10 years. Today, 10 years later, Qin Feiyang would definitely return once again. At that time, the Great Qin Empire would definitely undergo earth-shattering changes. And 10 years later, no one could predict how much Qin Feiyang would grow. Perhaps at that time, it would truly be the end. Forgotten continent, Black Cloud Mountain. A huge stone gate appeared in the sky. Qin Feiyang and the others walked out one after another. Yigleo put away the spatial gate, looked at Qin Feiyang and Mu Qing, and said, "Everything is over. Don't be distracted anymore. Try to get the Heaven Star Flame as soon as possible." "Over?" Qin Feiyang shook his head non-committally and said, "You guys go first. I want to be alone for a while." Yigleo looked at Qin Feiyang, then looked at the mysterious lady and the middle-aged man, then secretly said a few words to Mu Qing, opened a spatial gate, and left with the Mu family's great ancestor and second ancestor. The middle-aged man also looked at Qin Feiyang, then looked at the mysterious lady and said, "I'll also leave first. Don't forget what you promised me." The mysterious lady nodded. After the middle-aged man opened the spatial gate and left, the mysterious lady walked to Qin Feiyang's side and smiled. "Are you lost?" Qin Feiyang didn't deny it. 10 years was simply too short. He didn't know if he would have the strength to fight with the Imperial Preceptor by then. One must know. If he wanted to compete with the Imperial Preceptor, he must break through to the false god realm in these 10 years. And now, he was only a 1-star battle saint, far from the false god realm. Breaking through to the false god realm in 10 years, even with your talent, it's almost impossible. But as long as you enter the divine ruins, everything is possible. Of course, don't give yourself too much pressure. because even if you don't break through to the false god realm, there will be someone to help you. The mysterious lady smiled faintly, and when she said the last sentence, she glanced at Mu Qing meaningfully. I don't want others to help me. I want to rely on my own ability to overthrow them. I will definitely go to the divine ruins. Qin Feiyong clenched his hands, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. You can calm down so quickly. I really didn't misjudge you. Work hard. One day, the great Qin Empire will change because of you. The mysterious lady smiled faintly, opened the teleportation door, and left without looking back. At this point, only Qin Feiyong, Wolf King, and Mu Qing were left here. Qin Feiyong glanced at Mu Qing and said, "You go back first." Mu Qing frowned and thought, "There's something I think I need to tell you." "What?" Qin Feiyong asked. Mu Qing said, "When you were unconscious, the masked old man called your mother a little special." "What did he call her?" Qin Feiyong said. Mu Qing said, "He called your mother Lord." "What?" Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled, and he suddenly turned to look at Mu Qing. Wolf King also said, "Brother was in the castle and heard it too." This, Qin Feiyong's face was full of surprise and doubt. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something, and he looked at Wolf King and Mu Qing angrily, saying, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Mu Qing said helplessly, "The situation was so chaotic at that time that I completely forgot about it." "Little Qinzi, do you know who he is?" The Wolf King looked at Su Wen curiously. "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded, took a deep breath, and said with a smile in his eyes, "In this world, there is only one person who will call my mother Lord, and that is Uncle Yuan." "What? Is it that old man?" Wolf King was dumbfounded. "Yes, he is Uncle Yuan. It turns out that he has never left me and has been secretly watching me," Qin Feiyong said with a smile. This, Mu Qing and Wolf King looked at each other, their eyes full of shock. If this person was really Qin Yuan, then didn't that mean that Qin Yuan was a fake god? Oh my god. This is too amazing. Brother, why didn't I see that he was so strong before? Wolf King said in surprise. Nonsense. What was your cultivation level at that time? I guess you were not even a martial arts grandmaster. Mu Qing rolled her eyes. As a semi-divinity realm cultivator, it was easy for him to conceal his cultivation. That's true. Wolf King smiled awkwardly. Mu Qing also left, leaving only Qin Feiyong and Wolf King. A man and a wolf landed on the top of a mountain, sitting on the edge of a cliff, looking at the sky. So far, there are 5 fake gods. The foundation of the great Qin Empire is very terrifying. A moment later, Wolf King sighed. Yes, Qin Feiyong nodded. In the past, although he was also under pressure, he could still bear it. But now, after learning about the foundation of the imperial capital, frankly speaking, this pressure made him a little breathless. But it doesn't matter, you still have us. Let's not talk about Fatso and the others. Brother's talent is not worse than yours. When you step into the false god realm, I will definitely step into the false god realm too. When the time comes, we will go back to the imperial capital and turn it upside down. The Wolf King chuckled. Qin Feiyong glanced at it and said with a smile, "Thank you." Time flew by. The next day, early morning. After a night of settling down, Qin Feiyong's heart finally calmed down completely. Phew. He let out a long breath, got up, looked at Wolf King and said with a smile, "I have already broken through to the Battle Saint realm one step ahead of you. You have to work harder, otherwise the gap between you and me will become bigger and bigger." "SK, don't be so proud. I am also about to break through." Wolf King's eyes were full of disdain. "Don't doubt it. Uncle Yuan personally told me that with the purple gold dragon's blood, my current cultivation speed can be doubled. Do you know what kind of concept this is?" Qin Feiyong said. "What?" Wolf King's eyes widened in anger, and his eyeballs were about to fall out. "Are you anxious now?" Qin Feiyong looked at it playfully. "Nonsense. Quickly send me to the castle. I want to go into seclusion. Seclusion until death." Wolf King roared. Qin Feiyong shook his head and laughed. With a wave of his hand, Wolf King suddenly disappeared. Then, Qin Feiyong lowered his head and pondered for a moment before taking out the image crystal. Buzz. Not long after, a shadow appeared. It was Yinwei. You're back? Looking at Qin Feiyong, Yinwei was pleasantly surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded and said with a smile, it's been hard on you to leave you alone in the trading pavilion during this period of time. I've been cultivating in the trading pavilion every day. What's there to be tired about? But you, a few days ago, there was news that you were in trouble. What happened? Yinwei asked. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. A small accident happened, but it's already settled. That's good. Yinwei heaved a sigh of relief. In the past few days, he had been worried about Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong smiled and asked, the mysterious person who bought the medicinal herbs hasn't appeared yet? Yes. Yinwei nodded. When? Who? Chapter 936. On the second day after you left. However, he used the portal to come and go, so I couldn't follow him. Yinwei said. Qin Feiyong frowned and asked, did you ask about his background? Yes. But he was very tight-lipped. No matter how much I asked, he just wouldn't tell me. Yinwei said. Qin Feiyong's eyes were filled with disappointment. Yinwei pondered for a while and said, I think it's very likely that he's from the Mu family. Why do you think so? Qin Feiyong looked at him suspiciously. You just left the Central Divine Kingdom, and he appeared right after. What does this mean? This means that he knows that you've left. And in the whole forgotten continent, other than me, only the Mu family knows that you've left. Yinwei analyzed. Qin Feiyong fell into deep thought. To be honest, Yinwei's analysis was very reasonable. He could almost conclude that it was the Mu family. But after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it didn't make sense. Because if Yinwei could think of it, the Mu family could also think of it. Even if other people in the Mu family couldn't think of it, with Mu Qing's brain, he definitely wouldn't ignore this point. If he was Mu Qing, he definitely wouldn't go to the trading pavilion to buy herbs at this time. Because if he did that, he would expose himself. But other than the Mu family, who else could it be? After all, there was one thing that Yinwei was right about. This time, in the whole forgotten continent, only the Mu family knew that he had returned to the great Qin Empire. It seems that no matter what, the Mu family is the prime suspect. Qin Feiyong rubbed his forehead, looked up at Yinwei and asked, have you asked about the Mu family's address? Without your permission, I don't dare to act rashly, so I haven't asked about it yet. Yinwei said, okay. Now your first task is to find out the Mu family's address. The sooner the better. Qin Feiyong said. All right. Yinwei nodded, and the shadow disappeared. Qin Feiyong put away the image crystal. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then, he took out an illusory form pill and changed into Ancestor Mu's appearance. He then opened a portal and returned to the main tower. But he didn't return to the alchemy room in the first tower. Instead, he headed straight for the depths of the main tower. He was going to the Warrior Mountain Range. Going to the Warrior Mountain Range was naturally to find Guofeng, because this Guofeng still owed him a rank 6 Pillfire. Along the way, he had to pass by the fighting arena and martial arts treasury. Isn't that admiring the ancestors? I haven't seen him in a few days. I wonder what he's doing. Just like before, as long as Qin Feiyong appeared, it would inevitably cause a commotion. But for this, Qin Feiyong turned a blind eye to it. That's not right. Why did his aura become even stronger? He seems to have a holy aura. Could it be that he has already broken through to the Battle Saint realm? Those with sharp eyes also noticed the change in Qin Feiyong's aura, and their eyes were filled with surprise. You must be joking. He only broke through to the 9-Star War sect after entering the main tower. How long has it been? How could he break through again? You must be hallucinating. Another person followed. Is it really an illusion? Some people muttered. Qin Feiyong's speed was too fast and basically brushed past people, so no one could carefully observe his aura. Soon, Qin Feiyong arrived in the air above the martial arts treasury. Glancing at Elder Wang who was guarding the door, he did not stop and continued to fly deeper. At the same time, Elder Wang, whose eyes were tightly shut, suddenly opened his eyes when he sensed Qin Feiyong's aura. 2 rays of light shot out. Wait, he hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang was startled. He stopped, lowered his head to look at Elder Wang, and asked suspiciously, "Is Elder Wang talking to disciple?"
Yes.
Elder Wang nodded, then soared into the sky and landed in front of Qin Feiyang, sizing up Qin Feiyang. "What's the matter, Elder Wang?" Qin Feiyang became more and more puzzled and asked, "Your aura?" Elder Wang was bewildered. "So it's for this." Qin Feiyang suddenly realized and laughed. "This disciple is lucky. I just broke through to the one-star war saint." "You really broke through?" Elder Wang was dumbstruck. Wasn't this speed a little too fast? Lucky? Who would believe that? Whoosh. Elder Wang took a few deep breaths and finally calmed down the shock in his heart. He smiled and asked, "How is the soul refining technique?" At the mention of the soul refining technique, Qin Feiyang's mind was filled with countless questions. He cupped his hands and pleaded, "I hope you can tell me the truth. What level of battle art is this soul refining technique? Didn't this old man say that it has no grade?" Elder Wang said. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "This disciple does not dare to doubt your words, but according to this disciple's observation, this soul refining technique does not seem to be simple." "Oh?" Elder Wang suddenly became interested and asked, "What do you mean?" "To be honest, this disciple has many battle arts, and there is no lack of perfect battle arts. But even if these are perfect battle arts, this disciple can easily comprehend them. But this soul refining technique, this disciple has been comprehending it for a long time, but I have no clue at all. This is obviously not normal." Qin Feiyang's brows were tightly knitted together, and he was extremely puzzled. "I see. This problem, you have to solve it yourself?" This old man can only tell you that the soul refining technique is indeed a type of battle art with no grade. If you really can't comprehend it, then give up. After all, it is not a precious battle art, so there is no need to waste too much time," Elder Wang said with a smile. After saying that, he did not give Qin Feiyang a chance to ask again. He turned around and dived down, landing in front of the martial arts treasury, and sat down cross-legged, then closed his eyes. Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously, but did not pester him any further, and turned to leave. Not long after Qin Feiyang left, Elder Wang opened his eyes again, glanced around, and seeing that there was no one around, he took out the image crystal. Buzz. Very soon, the virtual image of a middle-aged man appeared. It was the Chief Pagoda Master. Elder Wang said with a smile, "Chief Pagoda Master, that kid has broken through to the Battle Sage realm." The Chief Pagoda Master was stunned and asked, "Who is it?" "Ancestor Mu." Elder Wang said, "What? This is impossible. Don't joke around." The Chief Pagoda Master stared and shook his head. "Look at this old man. Do I look like I am joking? He just passed by me, and I personally confirmed it," Elder Wang said with a smile. The Chief Pagoda Master was extremely shocked. He was a very cautious person. When he had asked Gongsun Bei to look for Qin Feiyang, he had already investigated Qin Feiyang. Although he did not find out Qin Feiyang's identity, he knew Qin Feiyang's cultivation like the back of his hand. When Qin Feiyang entered the Central Divine Kingdom, he was still only an 8-Star War sect. After a year of closed-door cultivation, he broke through to the 9-Star War sect. And when he asked Gongsun Bei to look for Qin Feiyang, it was also when Qin Feiyang had just stepped into the 9-Star War sect. In other words, it had only been 10 days since Qin Feiyang had broken through to the 9-Star War sect. He broke through a realm in 10 days. How did he do it? When you made this request, it was because you didn't want to accept him as your disciple and deliberately made things difficult for him. But I didn't expect him to actually do it. Now, tell me, how do you plan to deal with it? Elder Wang looked at him mockingly. What else can I do? As the Chief Pagoda Master, I can't possibly go back on my word. The Chief Pagoda Master smiled bitterly. This time, he had really miscalculated. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, "What about the soul refining technique?" This old man also asked just now. Although he hasn't comprehended it yet, he has already discovered that the soul refining technique is extraordinary. Elder Wang said. The Chief Pagoda Master said, "In that case, this child is indeed a promising talent." Let's not talk about the soul refining technique for now. Just based on his talent and cultivation, he is worth us focusing on nurturing, Elder Wang said. The chief pagoda master nodded his head and laughed. It seems like you like him a lot. There's nothing I can do about it. His performance is too good. I can't help but like him, right? So many days have passed. Is there still no news of Qin Feiyang and that mysterious woman? Elder Wang frowned. No, these two seem to have evaporated into thin air. The chief pagoda master shook his head. During this period of time, in order to find Qin Feiyang and the mysterious woman, he had put in a lot of effort, but there was still no news. Qin Feiyang. Elder Wang pondered for a while and said, how about this? Let Gongsun Bei and the others stop the investigation first. The chief pagoda master was stunned and asked, why? If it were you, facing the investigation of the chief pagoda master, would you appear? Elder Wang asked. No. The chief pagoda master shook his head. Isn't that right? Right now, Gongsun Bei is leading people to search everywhere with great fanfare. If it were anyone else, they would hide, let alone this cunning Qin Feiyang. But if we don't make a move first and wait for the news to pass, he will appear sooner or later. At that time, we will wait for the opportunity to capture him, Elder Wang said. Makes sense. The chief pagoda master nodded thoughtfully, then asked, then, should I inform Gongsun Bei now? And Elder Wang nodded. Then, the two turned off the image crystal at the same time. However, they would never have thought that the person they were looking for was right beside them. At the same time, Qin Feiyang pondered as he flew toward the warrior mountain range. Although Elder Wang had repeatedly stated that the soul refining technique was a kind of unranked battle technique, he felt that Elder Wang seemed to be hiding something. What kind of secret was this soul refining technique hiding? Unknowingly, a vast mountain range entered Qin Feiyang's sight. He temporarily put aside this doubt and looked up at the mountain range. The mountain range stretched as far as the eye could see. Giant peaks stood tall, exuding a majestic aura. The mountain streams were lush with vegetation and ferocious beasts everywhere. A wide river, like a giant python, meandered across the entire mountain range. Among them, 10 giant peaks were especially special. The 10 giant peaks were of the same height, about 50 to 60,000 feet tall. They were extremely steep, like 10 giant swords towering into the sky. On each giant peak, there were countless caves of various sizes. They looked like they were riddled with holes. However, these were not ordinary caves, but the cave dwellings of the warrior mountain range's disciples. At the top of each of the 10 giant peaks, there was a tall stone tablet. On each of the tablets, there were 3 bold and powerful words engraved on them. First peak, second peak, third peak, and finally, third peak. The 10 giant peaks formed a circle, like 10 kings standing proudly among the mountains, looking down in all directions. Chapter 937. Qin Feiyang looked at the third summit. Guofeng was the king of the third summit, so he should be in one of the cave abodes at the top. Whoosh! He turned into a ray of light and flew towards the peak of the mountain. Ancestor Mu? Why did he come to our martial artist mountain range? The disciples he met along the way all looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Swoosh! A moment later, Qin Feiyang stopped in front of the peak of the third summit, glanced at the cave abodes at the top, then closed his eyes and sensed carefully. He sensed the auras of many people, and they were basically all 9 Star Wars sects. However, he did not sense Guofeng's aura. Not here. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and expanded his search range. Finally, on the other side of the third summit, he sensed a familiar aura and opened his eyes. Following that, he flew around the third summit to the other side and looked at the cave abode in the center. Guofeng's aura was inside. Swoosh! Qin Feiyang landed in front of the cave abode and was about to enter, but at this moment, a familiar figure hurriedly walked out of the cave abode. It was Guofeng. When he saw Qin Feiyang standing in front of the cave abode, Guofeng was stunned. But then, his face darkened, because he knew the purpose of Qin Feiyang's visit. Long time no see. Qin Feiyang greeted affectionately. What are you doing here? Guofeng frowned. Playing dumb? Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment, then laughed. I haven't seen you for a long time, so I wanted to come and visit you. He knew how to play dumb too. Visit me? Would you be so kind? Guofeng sneered. Your words make me sad. Although I'm not a good person, I'm still someone who keeps his promises. For example, I've always kept my mouth shut about you harassing Chu Xian. Qin Feiyang laughed. The meaning behind his words was obvious. If he continued to play dumb, then don't blame him for being ruthless. Guofeng's face sank, and a shocking cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. But he didn't say anything. He took out an iron box and threw it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed the iron box and opened the lid. Inside lay a cluster of alchemy fire. Next, he cut his finger and dripped a drop of blood to claim ownership. After the blood contract was completed, and he confirmed that it was a grade 6 alchemy fire, he put it away. I've already given you what you want. I hope you can keep your word. Guofeng said solemnly. That depends on my mood. Qin Feiyang chuckled, then turned around and left. Be as arrogant as you want. It won't be long before I take it back with interest. Looking at Qin Feiyang's back, Guofeng's eyes flashed with a cold light. He then turned into a stream of light and headed deeper into the mountain range. Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked at Guofeng in confusion. Then, he flashed into the castle. Fatso and the others were cultivating. Qin Feiyang didn't disturb them. He looked at the Spirit Snake Emperor and said, You go and monitor Guofeng. Why? The Spirit Snake Emperor looked at him suspiciously. This person will definitely not let it go, so I need to clearly grasp his every move. Qin Feiyang said, This guy really does things flawlessly. The Spirit Snake Emperor muttered secretly. The longer it stayed with Qin Feiyang, the more terrifying it felt. But what was terrifying was not Qin Feiyang's methods, but his meticulous nature and mind. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the Spirit Snake Emperor out of the castle. With the Spirit Serpent Emperor on his side, he could rest assured. Next, he took out 3 clusters of grade 6 alchemy fire. One of them was a grade 6 alchemy fire, which was left behind by Pei Zhangfeng. The other 2 were given to him by Guofeng. It could be said that Guofeng had contributed a lot to the upgrade of the Nether Devil Flame to grade 7. Soon, the Nether Devil Flame swallowed the 3 types of alchemy fire one after another, and its aura instantly soared by a large amount. Fatso and the others were all awakened by this aura. Looking at the current Nether Devil Flame, their eyes were filled with fear. This was because the current Nether Devil Flame posed an extremely strong threat to them. Little Qin Zi, why do I feel that the Nether Devil Flame has a faint holy might? Wolf King was surprised. The grade of the alchemy flame corresponds to our cultivation, Li Mu said. Grade 1 alchemy fire is equivalent to a martial artist. Grade 2 alchemy fire is equivalent to a martial master. And grade 7 alchemy fire is equivalent to a war sage. It is equivalent to a sacred object, so it naturally contains a holy might. Qin Feiyang laughed. Wolf King's face froze and said, So you're saying, just this Nether Devil Flame is enough to instantly kill a 9-star war sect? Not one, but a group. As long as the Nether Devil Flame is revived, no matter how many 9-star war sects come, they will all die, Qin Feiyang said. But just as he finished speaking, a trace of bewilderment suddenly crept up in his eyes. What is it? Wolf King asked in bewilderment. Qin Feiyang did not answer and closed his eyes. Ever since the Spirit Snake Emperor left, he had been spying on the Spirit Snake Emperor's inner thoughts. The reason he did this was not to guard against the Spirit Serpent Emperor. Instead, he wanted to know what Guofeng was doing through the Spirit Serpent Emperor. This sounded a bit mysterious, but it was indeed possible. Because, after the Spirit Snake Emperor followed Guofeng, some thoughts would inevitably emerge in his heart. Through the Spirit Serpent Emperor's inner thoughts, he could indirectly see what Guofeng was doing at that moment. In other words, the Spirit Snake Emperor was equivalent to a medium to convey information. And just now, he found out through the Spirit Snake Emperor's inner thoughts that Guofeng had arranged to meet Guiyun somewhere. Moreover, what did he seem to be plotting? You guys continue to cultivate. I'm going out for a while. A moment later, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, said something to Fatso and the rest, and hurriedly left the castle. The castle that was exposed to the outside would automatically fall. Therefore, the place he appeared now was in a dense forest below the mountain stream. He glanced around, restrained his aura, and rushed in the direction Guofeng had gone. Not long after, he left the warrior mountain range and appeared in front of a mountain ridge. Then, he rushed up the mountain ridge, stood at a commanding point, and looked ahead. However, in front of him, there were mountains and lush vegetation, and there was no way to find Guofeng. "Why are you here?" But at this moment, a cold voice entered Qin Feiyang's mind. "Spirit Snake Emperor?" Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He lowered his head and saw a green silhouette leaping out from the forest below. At this moment, its entire body was green, and even its eyes were green. If it was mixed in with the leaves and grass, it would definitely be impossible to find it. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I'm worried about you, so I followed to take a look." "Worried? Don't give me that. I think you're questioning my ability to do things." Spirit Snake Emperor looked at him unhappily. "I'll question anyone, but I won't question your ability," Qin Feiyang said helplessly. Spirit Snake Emperor said coldly, "I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. I was just about to go back and report to you." Qin Feiyang didn't beat around the bush and waved his hand. "No need to report, lead the way. I want to see what they're planning." "You know, even without reporting, do you know how to pinch your fingers to read fortunes?" Spirit Snake Emperor was shocked. "I don't know how to pinch my fingers to read fortunes, but I can see what you're thinking." Qin Feiyang laughed. This Spirit Snake Emperor was stunned and muttered, "So that's how it is." Then, it turned around and led Qin Feiyang into the forest below and flew forward. After flying for a while, Spirit Snake Emperor suddenly sent a sound transmission. "I say, can you not peek into my thoughts in the future? I feel so uncomfortable." "I'm not a peeping Tom." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. "I think you are." Spirit Snake Emperor stopped and turned to glare at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang quickly said, Okay. I promise you, I won't peek into your thoughts in the future, okay?" "That's more like it." Spirit Snake Emperor smiled proudly and continued to lead the way. Looking at Spirit Snake Emperor's appearance, Qin Feiyang was very depressed. Who was the master here? Why did he feel that he didn't have any dignity at all? Of course, it was precisely because he didn't have any master's arrogance and never threatened or tempted others that Yin Wei and the Black Dragon Snake and other beasts would follow him wholeheartedly. If it was another attitude, everyone would probably have rebelled. In fact, this was a way of life. If you treat others well, others will naturally repay you double. About 20 breaths. The Spirit Serpent Emperor brought Qin Feiyang to the edge of the forest. They stood behind a bush and looked ahead. Not far away, there was a lake. The lake was about 1,000 feet long, and the water was clear and sparkling. The shore of the lake was overgrown with weeds that were about a meter tall. Obviously, very few people set foot here. And on top of a blue stone by the lake, a figure stood. It was Guofeng. His back was facing Qin Feiyang and Spirit Snake Emperor. He lowered his head and scanned the lake. No one knew what he was thinking about. Swish. Soon, a figure descended above the lake. It was a purple-clothed young man with a tall and straight figure, bright eyes and white teeth, and an outstanding temperament. "You're here." Guofeng finally raised his head and looked at the purple-clothed young man. And the purple-clothed young man was the king of the second tower, Guo Yun. Guo Yun nodded and landed in front of Guofeng. He frowned and said, "What's the matter that made you look for me in such a hurry?" "Ancestor Mu came in the end," Guofeng said in a low voice. Guo Yun raised his brows and said, "You gave it to him?" Guofeng said gloomily, "I had no choice but to give it to him. Isn't this all your fault? Why did you look for Chu Xin for no reason? Her family is just a small tribe. She has no value at all." Guo Yun said angrily. There was also a trace of anger in Guo Feng's eyes. "It has already happened. What's the point of saying this now?" Guo Yun said, "I'm just reminding you to be more careful in the future." Then, he paused and said, "No matter what, we've finally settled this matter with Ancestor Mu. Although we lost 2 clusters of 6th grade Pillfire, it's worth it. Now, What you have to do is to settle pay you as soon as possible. Not necessarily. Guo Feng shook his head. What do you mean? Guo Yun frowned. Guo Feng said, Ancestor Mu is a greedy and insatiable person. I'm worried that he might use this matter to blackmail me. Even if he doesn't blackmail me, what if he tells Pei about it one day? Our efforts would go to waste. Guo Yun's eyes turned slightly gloomy, and he asked, What do you mean? Kill him and get rid of all future troubles. Chapter 938. Kill me? Qin Feiyang frowned. This Guo Feng was quite bold. He actually wanted to get rid of him. At the same time, Guo Yun fell into deep thought when he heard this. A moment later, he looked up at Guo Feng and said in a low voice, According to the members of the First Pagoda, Ancestor Mu is very powerful and Pei values him greatly. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get rid of him. Of course I know that, but we can use a soft method, Guo Feng said. A soft method? Guo Yun was doubtful. Guo Feng said, In a few days, I'll invite him to a banquet and take the initiative to show my goodwill. Then, I'll take the opportunity to poison him at the table. Poison him? This? Guo Yun frowned. Guo Feng said, I know this method is a little despicable, but it doesn't matter to someone like him. Are you sure you want to do this? Guo Yun looked at him with hesitation in his eyes. I'm sure, and I've already thought about what poison to use. Guo Feng nodded. What poison? Guo Yun asked. The venom of the bloodthirsty scorpion. Guo Feng said word by word with a cold glint in his eyes. Guo Yun's pupils constricted. He seemed to be very wary of the venom of the bloodthirsty scorpion. Next, the two of them secretly discussed for a while more before leaving. The spirit serpent emperor asked, Qin Feiyang, what is the bloodthirsty scorpion? Qin Feiyang said, It's a poisonous creature from 10,000 years ago. It's very scary. How scary? The spirit serpent emperor was curious. Qin Feiyang said, The antidote pill can't remove it. Once poisoned, you'll die within 3 breaths. What? The spirit serpent emperor was shocked. In this world, there was actually poison that couldn't be removed by the antidote pill? The spirit serpent emperor asked, Then what do you plan to do? I didn't want to deal with them at first, but they were too insensible. They actually wanted to plot against me. And they used such a despicable and vicious method. In that case, this time, I'll get rid of all of them and make the scorpion tribe disappear completely, Qin Feiyang said with a bone-chilling killing intent in his tone. The spirit serpent emperor asked, So, you've already thought of a plan? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Ugh. Spirit serpent emperor was stunned. He hadn't even thought of a way to deal with it, yet he had already said such big words. This was a little ridiculous. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered. The spirit serpent emperor also tactfully fell silent. Time passed by slowly. After a few hundred breaths, Qin Feiyang's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. Have you thought of it? Spirit serpent emperor hurriedly asked. Qin Feiyang nodded, a cold smile appearing in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, Fatso appeared out of thin air. As soon as Fatso came out, he said impatiently, What are you doing? Fat Lord is going into seclusion. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. It seemed like Fatso was starting to get anxious after learning about the benefits of the purple gold dragon blood. I'll go into seclusion after this matter is settled, Qin Feiyang said. What is it? Fatso was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, Help me find a spider called Bloodsoul Spider. Bloodsoul Spider? Fatso was slightly stunned and asked, What's the use of it? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, The Bloodsoul Spider is also a highly poisonous creature from 10,000 years ago. It's even stronger than the bloodthirsty scorpion. Fatso's pupils shrank and he said in surprise, Why are you looking for it? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Of course it's to neutralize the venom of the bloodthirsty scorpion. What do you mean? Fatso was more and more confused. Although the venom of the Bloodsoul Spider and the bloodthirsty scorpion is enough to kill people, if you swallow these 2 venoms at the same time, it will have the effect of neutralizing the toxicity. In short, the combination of the venom of these 2 creatures is equivalent to the antidote. Qin Feiyang explained. This, Fatso and the spirit snake emperor looked at each other. Was this the legendary fight poison with poison? Fatso frowned and said, "Then where is Fat Lord going to find this blood soul spider? If I knew, why would I ask you out?" Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him. Fatso pursed his lips and said helplessly, "All right, I'll go ask Li He first." After saying that, he opened a portal and left. When the portal disappeared, Qin Feiyong looked at the spirit snake emperor and said with a smile, "Let's go and find that key person." "What key person?" The spirit snake emperor was suspicious. "A person who can crush anyone into pieces." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He changed into a clean set of clothes and opened a portal. The spirit snake emperor looked at him in confusion and then shrank its body, turning into a stream of light and coiled around Qin Feiyong's index finger. The color of its skin quickly turned silver without any impurities. At first glance, Qin Feiyong looked like he was wearing an exquisite ring. Qin Feiyong raised his hand and shook his index finger. He nodded and said with a smile, "Your ability to change color is really good. Are you jealous? But this is something that can't be envied." The spirit snake emperor smiled proudly. Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. He retracted his aura to the extreme and entered the portal. At the next moment, he descended on a street. On the street, there was an endless stream of people, and right in front of him, there was a restaurant with dragons and phoenixes. It was the Dragon Phoenix restaurant. Although it was still morning and not mealtime, there were many people entering and leaving the restaurant. Qin Feiyong tidied his clothes and strode into the Dragon Phoenix restaurant. "Young Master Mu, what a rare guest. What have you been busy with recently? It's been so long since you came to our Dragon Phoenix restaurant." A waiter immediately came up to greet him, nodding and bowing with a smile. To the waiter of the Dragon Phoenix restaurant, Qin Feiyong could be considered an acquaintance. "I'm busy cultivating. I don't have time," Qin Feiyong said with a faint smile. The waiter said with embarrassment, "Young Master is so talented and hardworking. You really make us mediocre people feel ashamed." Qin Feiyong smiled. The waiter asked, "Young Master, do you want to sit in the hall or go to the pavilion?" "Let's sit in the hall," Qin Feiyong said. "All right, young master, follow me," the waiter shouted and turned around to lead Qin Feiyong to an empty table. There were already many guests in the hall. When they saw Qin Feiyong, there was a trace of curiosity in their eyes. During the last auction of the Dragon Phoenix wine, Qin Feiyong suppressed everyone and won the first place. However, in the end, he gave the opportunity to young Master Hao. Since then, this matter had been discussed enthusiastically in the Dragon Phoenix restaurant. Therefore, they all wanted to see what was so extraordinary about Qin Feiyong. And towards all of this, Qin Feiyong had always been calm. He sat at the dining table, looked at the waiter, and said with a smile, "Give me a pot of dragon's wine and a few special dishes." "All right." The waiter nodded and immediately went to arrange it. Qin Feiyong raised his head and looked at the top floor. Why wasn't there any sound of the zither today? Not long after, the waiter walked over with a pot of dragon's wine and 3 dishes. Qin Feiyong retracted his gaze and looked at the waiter, asking, "Why isn't your young miss playing the zither today?" The waiter came to a realization and said, "So young master is here for my young miss, but it's not time yet." Qin Feiyong was stunned. The waiter had clearly misunderstood, and he had just asked casually, "Young master, please enjoy." After the waiter finished setting up the dishes, he said with a smile and turned to leave. Just as the waiter left, a young man at the next table glanced at Qin Feiyong from the corner of his eyes, then stood up, holding the wine pot and wine cup. He walked to the opposite side of Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, "Brother Mu, can we sit down and chat for a while?" Qin Feiyong looked at him suspiciously, stretched out his hand and said with a smile, "Sure, please take a seat." The young man sat next to Qin Feiyong and poured wine for Qin Feiyong, saying, "Brother Mu, there's something that has been bothering me for a long time." "What is it?" Qin Feiyong asked. The young man poured the wine, then put down the wine pot and asked in a low voice, "What was the answer you gave last time?" Qin Feiyong was stunned, then shook his head and said with a smile, "It's just a trivial answer. Why are you so persistent?" Perhaps in Brother Mu's eyes, this is just a small matter, But in our eyes, this is a very inconceivable thing. The young man smiled bitterly. Yes, the young lady of the Longfeng Pavilion is arrogant and mysterious. Think about it, over the years, I don't know how many people have tried their best to see her, but they have always been rejected. Even young Master Hao couldn't move her. Thus, to be able to obtain her approval is not an easy task. The other guests next to them couldn't help but sigh. Qin Feiyang glanced at these people with a hint of disdain in the depths of his eyes. Wasn't it just a woman? Was there a need to be like this? He couldn't figure out what was in these people's minds all day long. The young man put down the wine cup and sincerely cupped his hands. Brother Mu, I really hope that you can solve the doubts in our hearts. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, It's not a secret, so there's no harm in telling you. The answer I gave is that since ancient times, kings have been fickle and the most ruthless royal family. Since ancient times, kings have been fickle and the most ruthless royal family. Everyone immediately fell into deep thought. They remembered that in that painting, there were mountains and rivers, people at dawn, ferocious beasts and slaughter, and in the sky, there was a 5-clawed golden dragon floating. Looking down at all of this coldly, I understand. Since ancient times, the symbol of every king is a 5-clawed golden dragon. So that 5-clawed golden dragon represents the king, and the mountains and rivers, the common people, and the slaughter represent everything in the world. That 5-clawed golden dragon is high up in the sky, looking down at all of this coldly. This reflects one word, ruthless. Since ancient times, kings have been fickle and the most ruthless royal family. This sentence just so happens to fully explain the true meaning of that painting. Brother Mu is really brilliant to be able to think of this answer. I admire you. The young man cupped his hands and smiled. The others also understood and cast admiring gazes at Qin Feiyang one after another. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He didn't expect that an answer would actually cause a sensation. He picked up the wine cup and was about to drink it, but at this moment, a hearty laugh came from outside the door. Hee, what's going on today? It's so lively so early in the morning. Before he finished speaking, a young man in embroidered clothes entered the Dragon Phoenix house. Behind him, there was a large group of young men and women. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.